Testing, testing. Okay, we'll go ahead and call this regular City Commission meeting of June 25th to order. Before I ask for an approval of the agenda, I'd like to note the absence of Commissioner Glanzer. She had a wedding that she needed to attend in Massachusetts, so she is enjoying 65 degrees with no humidity right now. And I also would like to pull item 9D from the agenda items, approving the amendments to the City of Newberry Charter. We'll bring that back at the next meeting. So with that one change, do I have a motion to approve? I have that motion from Commissioner Hersom and a second from Commissioner Martin. Right. Any other comments or questions about the agenda? Any comments or questions from the public about the agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Motion passes unanimously. We'd like to invite Pastor James Taylor from the Church of God by Faith to come join us at the podium and give us the invocation tonight. And after our invocation, if you would remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Welcome, Pastor Taylor.
Good evening, Mayor, my Lord, and Commissioners. We thank God for the opportunity to be back before you. Before I pray, if I could, I got this small token for you from our youth department. We started our sidewalk service on yesterday, and we have service outside the church, and after service we feed up the community, anybody that desire to be partakers of it. So yesterday we had our first service, and we wanted to donate this shirt to you.
Thank you, sir. That is awesome. I appreciate it. Madam Clerk, would you mind getting that for him? Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Let us know the next time you're going to do that. I'm sure we
every fourth Sunday we'll be there at 12:30, and anybody and everybody's invited. Food was really good.
You get us with food now every time.
Free food. Yes, sir. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we come right now with bowed heads and humble hearts to say thank you. We thank you for life, health, and strength, God. We thank you for your grace and for your mercy. We thank you how you watched over us all day long, and you kept us from all hurt, harm, and danger, and you allowed us to come back into another meeting. We thank you for our mayor, God, and all the commissioners, God. We asking that you continue to bless them, strengthen them, and guide them. Bless them as they go out and bless them as they come in. Bless them in the city and in the field, and whatever they put their hands to do in the name of Jesus, that it prosper. Father, we asking that you watch over our community, God. We asking that you watch over our children while they're out for the summer, God. Keep them from all hurt, harm, and danger. We asking that you have your way in everything that's said and done here tonight. And Father, if you do these things, we'll be ever so careful to give you the praise, the honor, and the glory. It's in Jesus' name we pray, and every believer of God said amen.
Amen. I got to come to one of your services. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Taylor. That was beautiful. All right, Mr. Manager, I believe we have our business spotlight first up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Brian Thomas is going to introduce our business spotlight this week.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. The spotlight this evening is Rebecca's Hair Salon, our studio, excuse me, in Images by Francis. Rebecca Clark and Francis Bradley opened the hair studio in April 1993. I'm sorry, had they walked in? Oh, okay. Could you stand up or wave and let everybody know who you are, please? Okay. I didn't catch them coming in. Okay. But they've been here in Newberry since April 1993, 23 years in their original location up on State Road 45, and they moved over to, on the corner of 45 and Newberry Road. And then in 2017, moved into the historic downtown district and did some renovations on the building. And we are very happy to have them with us still and to recognize them as one of the long-term businesses here in the city of Newberry.
They've done just about every prom due in Newberry High School for the last 20 years, and they girls always look beautiful.
Thank you.
You want to come down and introduce yourselves to us and to all the folks watching at home on the TV or YouTube? You face us. The camera's on you. So you face us, the camera will get you, and everybody at home will see
I
you.
got my notes written on Publix notepads. Actually, prior to opening my shop, I began hairstyling at another Newberry salon in 1988.
Will you pull the microphone down just a little bit there? Brian's such a tall guy. There you go. That will pick you up on. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I opened Rebecca's Hair Studio in April of 1993, and from the minute the doors opened, the support we received was overwhelming, and it still is to this day. Frances joined me in 1995. Whew. And we pretty much never looked back. We acquired our new location at 25325 West Newberry Road in the fall of 2016 and opened our newly renovated shop in January of 2017. We actually love being in the historic district because y'all probably know where we came from. Throughout the years, our clientele has become friends, and many have become family. I was going to give a little shout out to Linda Woodcock. We call her Mama Linda because she has a knack for knowing exactly when to bring a truly life-saving homemade quiche to the shop after a 10-hour workday. And I mean life-saving. We are very fortunate to also have clients from Gainesville, Ocala, Dunellen, Old Town Chiefland, Cedar Key, and the list goes on. Because they go out of their way to seek us, we always recommend other Newberry businesses for them to try. We always tell them, get a bite to eat at one of our several restaurants, walk or drive around and check out the other storefronts, take the kids to the parks, and if they're really lucky, they can grab a delicious cupcakes a few doors down. They often take our suggestions, and actually we have people now that make their appointments around lunch and dinner. Mm-hmm. I have thoroughly enjoyed owning a business in Newberry, and we will continue to serve the community for years to come. And feel free to pop in anytime to say hi, not to walk in and get a haircut, but to pop in and say hi. Thank you.
I'm sure you can do some wonderful things with all this hair I got up here.
I
But
can. Mirror.
yeah. Well, while I've got you here on camera, I did want to take this opportunity to thank you for all the help that you guys give the kids around all those times a year when they're, in particular, trying to look nice. And I know you guys do a lot behind the scenes to make sure that they all can look their best. So thank you for that. And thank you for all the plugs you give for all the other businesses right around you. That's awesome. We appreciate that.
That's what businesses should do.
Absolutely. We agree completely. Thank you for being here tonight.
I'd like to also thank them for being.
Commissioner Farnsworth?
Yeah, I'd like to also thank them for being part of Newberry, and Rebecca's responsible for these beautiful locks that I have. So see what a good job she does, you know. But we really appreciate you guys, and hope you continue to stay here for many years to come.
Thank you, sir. Well, Scott, I've already introduced him one time tonight.
Well, I'll
Would
be
you
happy
like
to
to
step in and introduce David Robertson. He's a candidate for 8th Judicial Circuit Judge. It's a 6-county area, so we have, I think it may be the largest geographic circuit in the state of Florida. His lovely wife, Bonnie, is sitting next to him, and that's his greatest asset, I'll have to say, as part of his campaign to be a circuit judge. And the other thing that uniquely qualifies David to be a circuit judge is he's got 6 children. And I think with all that
Yes.
life experience, you know,
It's a lot of moderation.
That's right. A lot of patience and moderation. Those are big things as a judge, the things you need.
I hate to interrupt you, Scott. Does that mean you're going to be running for judge
No.
anytime soon?
And David, you have to have one more to catch up with me, but Try again. It's
No. No.
welcome.
I was going to ask real quick, do you think you can do anything with that? Thank you very much for that very nice introduction, Mr. Walker. Again, my name is David Robertson. I am running for circuit judge in the 8th Judicial Circuit, and for those of you that don't know, it does include 6 counties, as Scott mentioned. Alachua County, Baker County, Bradford, Union, Gilchrist, and Levy counties. And it's a really big area when you look at it on a map, but when you get out driving and knocking on doors and meeting people, it seems even larger. So it's a really big area. We have a really unique opportunity in August. August 28th is the primary. We have a very distinguished, wonderful judge who's reached the mandatory retirement age. Judge Holslander will be leaving the bench. And this will be the only circuit judge race on your ballot. You'll have a lot of things on your ballot, but this is the only circuit judge. You'll have an Alachua County judge seat that you'll vote for, but in terms of the circuit judge race, this is it. I have 2 competitors, but so what we're going to do in August is very, very important. And sometimes we forget about the judges, or we don't know enough about them. When we go to the polls, we know who we want to vote for when it comes to, for example, for governor or the attorney general or county commissioners, our school board members. But there's a lot of times when we get down to those boxes and we're selecting a judge, we don't know a lot about them. We don't know who they are. We don't know what their experience is. We don't know what they bring or may bring to the bench. So that's why I'm here tonight. I want to take just a couple of minutes and tell you just a little bit about myself. I've been a lawyer for 20 years, a little over 20 years, as a matter of fact. The first 10 years of my career I spent in private practice, mostly up in the 3rd Judicial Circuit, a little bit north of here, up in the Lake City, Live Oak area, but did practice law and litigate cases all over North Florida. Eventually, I became a partner in that law firm, helped own and run a very small business. So I understand what that's like. I understand the challenges of running a business and the responsibility of meeting a payroll. My experience in private practice, the types of cases I handled, is very broad. I handled a lot of family law cases, child custody matters. I did a lot of real estate transactions. I did a lot of work with the Swanee River Water Management District in the environmental resource permitting field. I was a city attorney for 2 years for the city of Live Oak, and some of the significant cases that I litigated include areas of sexual harassment, age discrimination, consumer protection, and our firm also served as lead counsel for a statewide, very complex class action litigation. So for a little over 10 years, I litigated all of those matters and everything, almost everything in between. And those were cases that were filed in state court. Those were also cases that were litigated in federal court, and I handled a number of cases before the Florida First District Court of Appeal. Currently, and for a little over 10 years, I serve as the general or chief counsel for the Florida Department of Transportation's North Central Florida area. It's 18 counties. It's the largest geographical district in the Department of Transportation. It stretches from Nassau County in the northeast, west to Madison County, south to Levy County, and then all the way back across the state to St. Augustine. So it's a very large area. And what I do for the Department of Transportation is I advise the district secretary and the district executive committee on implementation of the District 2 work program. And that work program is in excess of $1 billion annually. The last 3 or 4 years at least it has been. So we're putting a lot of transportation projects on the ground. And so what I do for the district secretary and the executive staff, they have questions that come up every single day. From condemnation or eminent domain matters to construction contracts, the big construction contracts that we let, to the procurement process, how we procure those services, maintenance issues, sunshine law, all of those types of issues that come up. I litigate cases on behalf of the Department of Transportation, so I'm not just an advisor or just a manager. I do litigate cases on behalf of the department, and I get heavily involved in drafting and negotiating contracts that are obviously related to the development of transportation systems all over North Florida. I also serve on the Office of General Counsel's statewide leadership team, so I'm involved in issues that affect the Department of Transportation all over the state. Last, I do manage a legal department in District 2. It consists of 8 lawyers and 4 paralegals, and the litigation that I manage there on an annual basis averages between $60 and $80 million in value. So when I talk about my experience, I try to divide it into three different areas or three prongs, if you will. And we've talked about the first two, my 10-plus years in private practice, my 10-plus years with the state of Florida, my municipal experience with the city of Live Oak. But the third prong is probably what I'm most proud of. I have 17 and a half years of service in the Florida Army National Guard. I'm a veteran, and I continue to serve, and I will continue to serve if I'm fortunate enough to be elected. I currently serve as the command judge advocate for the largest major subordinate command in the Florida Army National Guard, and I hold the rank of major. So I do a lot of different things as a military attorney. Two areas I'd like to highlight. I get heavily involved in what we refer to as domestic and international operational law. So the domestic side of that is when we get activated for a hurricane, or in 2012, I was fortunate enough to be selected as one of 3 judge advocates that helped with the Republican National Convention down in Tampa. But I advise our commander. The unit that I belong to is about 3,500 to 4,000 soldiers. So I advise that commander on how our troops are deployed during a hurricane, when we're assisting first responders, whether it be firefighters, other emergency personnel, or law enforcement, about what our soldiers can and can't do under Florida law. One of the greatest experiences of my life occurred in 2015 and 2016. I was deployed overseas in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. Our 2nd Battalion was deployed to East Africa, and it was it's a combat zone, and spent almost, I guess we were in country a little over 9 months. We were gone from home almost 12 months. But just an incredible experience working with some of the greatest people on the face of this earth. It was just a true pleasure to serve with the Guard over there. And then finally, just a couple notes about me personally. You heard Scott mention I am married, and my wife Bonnie is here tonight. I'm very proud that she's here with me, and she keeps me straight and where I'm supposed to be and when I'm supposed to be. We have 6 wonderful children, 2 of which do currently also serve in the United States military. Well, actually, let me take that back. 1 currently serves. 1 has completed 6 years of service and is now out finishing her college degree. Our youngest 2 children we adopted internationally from the country of Guatemala, and they just finished the 6th grade. They'll be starting the 7th grade in the fall.
Good luck.
Yeah. I always feel like I need to tell people I haven't lost my sanity just quite yet. And so a couple final points. I would like to highlight not all of my endorsements to date, but I do think it's important for people to hear some of these and understand who some of the people are that think that I am the right person to fill this vacant or soon to be vacant judicial seat. The sheriffs of Baker County, Bradford County, Union County, Gilchrist County, and Levy County have all endorsed my candidacy for this judicial seat, as well as the Alachua County Firefighters Union, the Gainesville Firefighters Union, the Levy County Firefighters Union, and the Gator Fire Council, together with the chiefs of police of the city of Alachua, High Springs, Chiefland, Lottie, and there are a few others. I do appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight, and I look forward to talking to as many of you as possible, and I really look forward to the opportunity to earn your vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
I know as a private citizen, it's difficult, as you said, to know the differences between the judges that are on the ballot. And it was difficult for me to make that determination. But seeing the history and the things that you've done and the service that you've given to this country and your community made it a lot easier for me personally to make that decision. So I appreciate you coming here tonight and sharing a little bit about what you have done with your life and your community. Thank you.
To piggyback on that real quick, Mr. Mayor,
Please.
it always helps to talk to your family lawyer, your business lawyer, your city attorney. Those are the people that know who's in the courthouse, who is meeting the requisites of ethics, and has the personal background that should be sitting on our judiciary. So I would encourage anyone out watching out there, or anybody here this evening that would like to talk to me about that personally, I'm happy to tell you about David further.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to traffic calming. Jamie?
Good evening, Commissioners. Yes, this is in regards to traffic calming in Newberry Oaks. As the Commission's aware, the city has received complaints from residents regarding excessive speeds on Northwest 232nd Terrace in the Newberry Oak subdivision. The Northwest 232nd Terrace has a posted speed limit of 25 miles per hour. In response to these complaints, the city requested that the Alachua County Sheriff's Office perform speed surveys in the subdivision. 3 speed surveys have been conducted since August of 2015. In addition to these speed studies, the city of Newberry has also installed 3-way stop signs at intersections at 2 different locations on Northwest 232nd. In an effort to ensure that the citizens' complaints are addressed appropriately, the city of Newberry has retained the services of George F. Young, an engineering firm with a traffic engineer on staff, to evaluate the traffic concerns on Northwest 232nd Terrace and provide a memorandum of findings. Mr. Jerry Dabrowski, PE traffic engineer for George F. Young, will present this memorandum and be available to answer questions on the same. Pleases the commission.
Do we have any questions for Jamie before we bring up the engineer? All right. Welcome, sir. Again.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. For the record, I'm Jerry Debkowski, a professional engineer with George F. Young.
Would you pull that microphone up just a little bit? It's a sensitive mic. Thank you.
For the record, I'm Jerry Debkowski, professional engineer, traffic engineer with George F. Young out of Gainesville, Florida. I've been providing this type of service for about 35 years throughout the state. And I'm here to do a little presentation for you and then answer any questions that you might have. Jamie and City Manager New asked me a couple months ago to meet with them and just talk a little bit about Northwest 232 Terrace and just decide if the traffic data that's available is reasonable, take a look at any factors along the corridor such as access, how wide the road is, what the speed limit is, any data that's been recorded over the years. So that was essentially my role, to look at the existing data, go to the corridor several times in the morning or in the afternoon and just get a feel for the corridor and then put some findings together. So essentially for those watching, we're looking at Northwest 232 Terrace, which is a north-south road in the Newberry Oak subdivision. It's essentially between 3rd Avenue and 7th Road on the very north end. It's completely filled with home sites along the west side and then a lot of vacant parcels along the east side. It is posted at 25 miles per hour, both northbound and southbound along that corridor. My scope was essentially to report on the existing speed data that was provided by the city and by the sheriff, do some field reconnaissance, which essentially is watch the actions that occur along the street, essentially looking at the stop signs, look and see who lives in the area, look and see if it's still built out or is there construction traffic coming still through there. Consider the potential future issues of speeding, which essentially means if you ride through the subdivision, there still is a lot of opportunity for probably 10 to 15 home sites to still be built, which means construction traffic is still going through there, and the potential for more traffic being on 232 definitely could happen within the next 5 years. And look for any suggestions for mitigation. And essentially, you have a traffic calming policy that was put in place by a resolution that you all passed probably about 2 years ago. So I took a look at that to see what opportunities we have for mitigation based upon that traffic information. Some of the findings, so that the folks at home can watch also, there were some studies done in late 17 and also studies done in early 2018. There were also studies done in 2015, 2016, but these are the two most current ones based upon such things as the stop sign. A 3-way stop has been installed essentially at Northwest 5th Place, which changes speeds and how people react along the corridor. So you can see between the two studies, the posted speed limit has been 25 miles per hour. Back in December, it had a high speed of 41. In February, it had a high speed of 35. When you take all that information together, you get what's called the 85th percentile speed, which in traffic business has been that way as long as I can remember, that the Florida Department of Transportation, cities, counties, use what's called the 85th percentile speed to set speed limits and also to look at characteristics of the road that 85th percentile represents.
Commissioner Farnsworth?
The speeds, how are they determined?
How is the posted speed limit determined?
The
Speed limit studies.
Like high-speed 41?
How are those studies done, I think is this question.
Yeah, how's that determined?
They were done by the Sheriff's Department, and they use a device that essentially looks like a box that was mounted on a post, and it records data with a radar inside that box. So it can record speeds from 5 miles per hour all the way to 100 if that's what folks are doing. So it's actually by radar.
Okay. When people see that box, do they generally slow down?
The box works a lot better than other modes, such as putting road tubes down, because road tubes, people see them, and some people may want to speed to play with the data. Some people want to go slower. The box is typically hidden. When I rode the corridor, the one next to it, I never saw the box. It was mounted on a post that was pretty hard to see.
Okay.
How big is the box, do you know?
I would say 12 by 12. Pretty small. And it has a radar device inside that records that. So in looking at the data, being on the corridor several times, essentially I think that the recorded reductions in the speed data have now reached a standard of approximately 25 miles per hour for the 85th percentile. Now, does that mean that there still aren't people speeding above 25? Yes, there are. Are there people below 25? Yes, there are. But when you put all that data together, essentially the posted speed limit of 25 matches what we found with the radar gun. So in this case, I would essentially say that what you see out there for speeds today are reasonable for that road. So I was asked to come up with some alternatives as part of that findings. And alternative one, of course, is to accept the opinions that the results really show that 25 mile per hour as an 85th percentile is reasonable. So alternative one is essentially is just accept the opinions. You might want to study it a couple of years from now or a year from now, but right now it appears the speeds are reasonable. And alternative two was based upon there was a petition request that came in 2017 when the speed data was recorded back in 2016 and 2017 that essentially said that it did meet your traffic calming policy and that ultimately you could put 2 speed tables along 232 based upon the old data. The new data shows that there really isn't a problem. The old data from 2016, 2017 shows that yes, there was speeding at that time. So the installation of the 3-way stop at 5th has clearly helped a lot in terms of reducing the overall speeds and putting the 85th percentile at 25. If you did want to consider a flat top speed hump, I was asked to show what one would look like. Typically in each direction, your vehicle, whether it's a car, a motorcycle, a fire truck, would drive over 22 feet of pavement that essentially the first 6 feet of pavement you will taper up 3 inches, then ride on a flat top for 10 feet, 3 inches, and then it tapers back down to the asphalt. That's a typical flat top speed hump that you're seeing on that diagram.
What, before you move on, there was an alternative 3 with a question mark. Was that, are you going to get to that later in the presentation or?
Yes.
Okay, just checking.
So to answer the question, your speed table policy that you adopted really only gives you 2 options. One is to do nothing, or one is to install flat top speed humps. So the alternative 3 is to share that there are a tremendous amount of other types of traffic calming devices. But because I only had the options under the resolution, the flat top is the valid one that's in your policy, or essentially leave the road alone. So
Do we have to hire you again to get you to share with us those other options, or are you prepared to do that here tonight? I mean, in your experience, what would be, absent the speed hump, what would be your go-to, with the assumption there is a speeding problem, what's your go-to policy to actually reduce speeding there? What would be your gut reaction?
There's probably 10 different types of traffic calming features. It could be, as we said, do nothing. It could be more selective enforcement, which means you only have the officer out there when you know there seems to be that very high speed. And typically it's only a couple cars that do it, and they do it on the same time every day. So you take law enforcement out there and just let them sit there for that 15 minutes waiting for that person to come through. That helps a lot. Sometimes you convert streets to one-ways. For instance, maybe 232 might be a one-way southbound, and then the road to the west might be a one-way northbound. And what that does is, first of all, it cuts the traffic in half, but then you can control speeds a lot more. Speed tables are a very effective tool. What's good about them is they will clearly control your speed. What's bad about them is people are worried that if a fire truck was to come over a speed hump, that they're going to be reduced in getting to the urgency 7 to 10 seconds per speed hump. So it's a big issue. There can be pinching of the road, which means narrowing the road down. If your road is, say, 24 foot wide, you can narrow it down to 20 foot wide. And narrowing of lanes actually reduces speeds. You could do bulb outs, which essentially are, again, narrowing the road. But what a bulb out does is it makes it so now even pedestrians that are crossing the road are only walking maybe 20 foot on the asphalt versus 24 foot, and it might be at the stop sign conditions, etc. You can put in special striping. For instance, you might want to put 25 mile an hour on the road. You might want to put stripes on the side that create bike lanes. Narrowing of lanes clearly slows traffic down. I'm not in favor of stop signs for speed control, because then what happens is people get used to it, know that you put it there for speed control, then it becomes an enforcement issue. So I'm not a real proponent of stop signs. They have been used, and sometimes they do work.
And in this instance, the stop signs are what make the studies within the range of no necessary action being recommended.
Correct. In your case, you actually have an Alachua police officer living there. You have an Alachua sheriff living there. You have a highway patrolman living there. So I would think that even with the officer keeping his car on the road, that helps a little bit. They actually have what's called officers sitting in a car that really aren't officers, and that works in some cities. They like that a lot, and they move the car around to act as if they're there for speed control. You can have flashing warning signs that are a radar that tell you you're speeding, please slow down. Those can be effective. They can be moved around. They don't have to be in one particular place. There's a couple other methods. There's probably 10 to 12 types of traffic calming measures.
Was there one in there that you would, particularly after having visited and done the reconnaissance and studied that road, that you think elevates up? I feel like we've tried the targeted ticketing method. So out of those other 9 options, is there one, the striping, the pinching, that you think that would be the most effective there?
Well, I think, based upon the data, you really don't have a problem. So you can experiment with things if you still would like to eliminate that 1 or 2 high-speed things or person that's doing that. Along that stretch of road, there could be 2 or 3 different types of things that you could try. The bulb out, the striping, sometimes parking, sometimes bike lanes. There's a number of things you could try, but your data shows that right now it's working the way it should.
Okay. Commission have any questions for the engineer, Dr. Herson, Commissioner Herson?
Do we have a sense of when those high-speed events were occurring? Those 41 and 35 mile an hour, max speeds?
Yes, we do. If you give me a second, I'll see if I can find it.
Does the manager have a while he's looking for
I,
that?
off the top of my head, can't respond, but when the data is collected, it is time-stamped. So, to my recollection, we didn't see a normal pattern to it. It seems to be kind of random. Now, Jerry may have looked at it for a different, in a different perspective, but, you know, we've been doing those speed studies in there now for 3 years or so, and we've not seen any recognizable patterns.
I would agree with that.
Commissioner Martin?
How much signage is involved with the speed table?
Speed table typically requires 4 signs.
Okay.
One approximately 200 feet in advance of the table, and then one at the table,
Okay.
both directions.
All right. And do you have any experience to speak to the liability that the city takes on with the installation of a speed table, if any?
I'll share with you what I've heard over 20 years. The first one by far is you put a speed table in, you'll be slowing EMS and fire to the emergency, and that can be essentially 7 to 10 seconds, depending upon what kind of vehicle it is. For instance, the fire truck are a rigid frame, and they will slow down by far to go over a flat top speed hump. There's differences now. Your resolution says a speed table. A speed table is typically the 22-foot long raised little table. A speed hump is only 12 foot. So a fire truck going over a speed hump will be delayed 10 to 12 seconds because they have to slow down to 3 miles per hour. A speed table, they slow down to about 15 to 20, but it still delays them 7 to 10 seconds going over those. So the biggest issue that I hear from a liability standpoint is the fire truck was delayed or the EMS was delayed to my home. And I'm going to sue you, city, okay? I've never seen a lawsuit on that situation. Then I have, and I think you saw my resume, I've been a hearing master on this for 20 years. I've done 1,200 hearings. I have a sheriff sit next to me when I do these because they can be very controversial. I've had 2 death threats because of the decisions that were made on traffic calming. So it's a tough thing. The second part of that I hear is the mother with the child says, if you don't slow that traffic down and my child is killed because you did not put speed tables in my community, I'll sue you, city. I have never seen a lawsuit in the 20 years that I've done this for either one of those cases. But those are the 2 extremes that I hear.
One thing that had concerned me about this was the amount of potential staff resource it might take to field calls about people claiming that the speed tables are damaging their suspension, increasing their wear and tear on their brakes, whether they have validity or not, but somebody calls, now we've got to entertain the phone call. Can you speak to any of that?
Absolutely. I'll hear 10 negatives. The EMS is number 1. I'll hear 10 positives, put them in, or my child will get hurt. And then about number 5 or 6 is I'm going to have to go to the body shop every 6 months and get an alignment. There's never been proof that these will upset the alignment of your vehicle, particularly because you put in flat top humps, you will stay under 25 miles per hour. You go above it, your groceries are going to be coming out of the bag, you're not going to be happy. And I have to say that I've driven over these thousands of times, and the flat top is the type that is the most gentle on vehicles, and that's the one that's in your resolution. So it's the bump that you really should stay clear of. So you'll hear those stories, and then I'll hear 20 positives and 20 negatives. There has been no truth to any of those that really holds water.
As an aside, I think that one of the things that a benefit that's come out of this conversation is that we need to go back to that resolution, because our presentation here today was limited to really, from his perspective, just a conversation of the flat tops, and he's got a lot of other ideas that weren't part of this presentation because our resolution only points people towards one solution. So at some point in time, I think we need to ask our staff to revisit that resolution to allow for some of these more creative solutions to be included in these conversations in the future. Commissioner Herson, were you reaching for the mic again? Or was it Commissioner Farnsworth? Commissioner Farnsworth.
Was anything done on the street that's parallel, northwest 233rd Terrace?
Just to the west,
Yes.
as of my last driving, there's been no traffic calming put on it.
There's no studies or anything done on that?
That I do not know.
Mr. Mayor, we've not had any requests, nor have we conducted any traffic speed analysis on Northwest 233rd Terrace.
Okay. Because I've had some people complain to me about that road also.
I believe they're working through the process of the petitions and that kind of stuff. There's the steps that we laid out in that resolution. And my last conversation with some of those residents were that they were working on the petition step.
Okay.
Commissioner Coleman. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Coleman.
233rd Terrace, the situation there is a lot of residents that are in the back of the neighborhood don't want to spend the seconds it takes to stop at the stop sign, so they decide to go down 233rd, and that's the situation there, seeing that I live on 233rd.
I'll just share a comment that traffic calming, you have to be extremely careful with the devices you use because diversion of traffic can happen very quickly. So when I think of 232, I think of whatever is most reasonable so that people won't divert over to that road. You have to be very careful because traffic calming can be like a mushroom. It can grow very quickly in a community.
Commissioner Herson.
With a traffic table, what's the best ground clearance for a vehicle? I'm thinking of my own personal experience. I have a lowered floored van for a child in a wheelchair, and traffic humps and tables wreak havoc on the bottom of those vehicles. And so what's the ground clearance that a citizen would want on a vehicle to have to be able to negotiate those?
The traffic table is the most comfortable to go over. The clearance, they should never be designed higher than 3.5 inches. And what happens is when you go up the 6-foot, 3-inch high ramp to get onto the flat part of the top and then go back down, that's 6 foot long. It takes into consideration the low vehicles. It's not abrupt. And I get asked all the time about Corvettes because they're probably one of the lowest riding cars. And we've done many studies on them, and 3.5 inches is the maximum you want to build these at for all vehicles.
Any other questions from the dais? I think we have some folks from the public who'd like to speak to this issue. You ready to hear from them? All right, don't go too far. We may have some follow-up questions for you. Is anybody here from the public who'd like to speak? Come on up. Adjust that mic for your height and introduce yourself.
Good evening. My name is Shelby Powell. I'm a resident on 232nd Terrace, where I have lived now for about 8 years. I have 2 3-year-old boys. Their names are Oliver and Alexander. If you've ever been around toddlers, you know that they like to run. And so this is a particularly dear issue to my heart because my children like to play in the yard, and the yard is close to the road. And so one of the things that I have observed is a lot of very excessive speed. And I guess the first question I have for you, Jerry, is do you know where that
Would you address your questions to me first, though, and we'll bring him back.
I can do that.
Yeah.
With this study that was conducted by ASO, I believe that the device was placed at a location that didn't capture all the traffic. So are you aware where that device was placed?
Would you come back and thank you for the formality.
Again, this is Jerry Depkowski. I do not know where the sheriff had that placed.
And Mayor Marlowe, do you know the range of that device?
I think it's about 150 feet, but I'll defer to the engineer.
Jerry Depkowski, I do not know the range because I did not see the actual device.
So one of the things that I had attempted to do in learning that this engineer study was happening was try to point out some of the issues with the ASO study. That study was conducted north of 5th Avenue. I live at 232nd. If you've observed 232nd, you'll notice that it has a gradient traveling from north to south. And the traffic, typically in my experience, is fastest in front of my house. If you're looking at the map, you see Northwest 3rd, right where it intersects at 232nd. My house is right there at that corner. So that means I get all the best of the best. I get the guys who are drag racing at their top speed. And so when ASO had run their first study back in December, I had pointed this out and said, hey, this is only 100 feet, which is what ASO had relayed to me at the time, and requested a second study be done. When they came back out, they put the device in the same place, which also happened to be at a stop sign at the top of the hill. So you're not going to get peak speeding. Again, it's only 100 feet. It's 1,500 feet on that entire road. So there were some issues here, in my opinion, about this survey that was done by ASO. So are you familiar with some of these issues, and do you believe that the validity of this ASO data still is impactful on what we're discussing tonight?
Let me see if some of our staff can address that. Ms. Amy, will you give him 30 seconds to account for the questions and answers that he can still use? Mr. Manager, do you know any of the answers, or does Jamie know any of the answers?
I think Jamie.
No, sir, I do not know the exact distance that the speed spy is capable of registering, but the field technician said that she set it to the manufacturer's recommended spacing to track that entire section of the road.
Do we have anybody here from ASO who could speak to that issue?
No.
Mr. Mayor, I would just point out to Jamie's to echo some. We actually met specifically with the technician and her supervisor, who I believe is
Lieutenant Lee?
Lieutenant Lee, that's right, David Lee, to discuss this. And I think what she indicated was that on an initial questioning about all this, she was familiar with it but didn't know exact specifications. When asked about exact specifications, she went back to the manual. She's certified to operate the device, and she confirmed that the setup of the device was in compliance with the manufacturer's recommendations in every instance. And so I didn't get a written statement from her, and she didn't tell me exactly on the road where she did it. She just said that initially when challenged, she was a little unsure about what the specs were. She went back and affirmed that they had complied with all the specs, and so we kind of took that at face value.
That's correct.
Got 49 additional seconds there, Mr. Powell.
Okay, great. So I come through this data more than anybody, and I can assure you that the distance is 150 feet, and if you measure from north of 5th Avenue and down to my street, you'll find that it will not capture that area. Some anecdotes: there's only one officer living on our street. He parks his car right at the top of the hill. His car has been hit 3 times. Cesar Vargas, he signed the petition. Every single person on our street, save for one, signed that petition because he had a Corvette. He said it's too low. Lo and behold, speed humps are not going to be damaging on his car. I'll give you some anecdotal evidence. I caught a kid doing 78 miles an hour down my road. How do I know? Because I posted on our Facebook group. I said, I saw this truck. If anybody knows this kid, please ask him to slow down. His mother brought him to my house. He was very kind. He admitted he was doing 78 miles an hour, and he apologized. That's just one example. I have found 6, 7 people where I've been able to have these personal conversations, but I am not our street sheriff. And so I come to you today asking if you would please fix this issue for Oliver and for Alexander and for all the other kids who live on my street, for the 20 people who signed this petition asking you to fix this problem, because the ASO data is not correct.
Thank you, sir. Is anyone else here tonight that'd like to speak?
My name is John Zupanzik. I also live on 232nd Terrace. I'm a little bit north of him, of Shelby. I believe I had and I'll keep this quick, I had a conversation with Commissioner Hersom, I believe that's how you say your last name, in my driveway. And you said something to me that really stuck in my mind, and that's we're not creating, the averages don't tell the full story. And so the averages with the speed limits and the 85th percentile and such, they don't tell the full story. And that full story is that we do have traffic that has come outside of your speed studies when they were conducted, you know, the 78 miles an hour. We've had 2 Honda Civics drag racing down our road. Yeah, side by side. So that's all I really have to say, is that the averages, they're great on a PowerPoint. They're great to sit up here and talk, but they don't show the full story. And I think that if you lived in our neighborhood, you'd get a better understanding of the full picture. And that's all I have to say. And I invite any one of you to come and sit in my driveway and have the conversations with Ricky and that we've had, and just take a look. You know, come have a beer with me. Yeah, but please, I mean, and Shelby had all his points were valid. So, and I agree. He really took all the talking I had out of my mouth. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public would care to speak on this issue? Okay. Hearing none, come back to the dais. You guys have any follow-up questions for our engineer or for staff? Commissioner Coleman.
Just got a comment. If you living there on 233rd, if they're going as fast on 232nd as they are on 233rd, there's a problem. That's just all I got to say. I'm seeing it every day.
Commissioner Farnsworth.
I was wondering if we need to go ahead and direct staff into looking into putting some speed humps on both those roads, and go ahead and move forward. I mean, just looking at that area and driving down it a few times, I can realize that if I was probably 16 years old and had a straightaway like that, I'd be cruising pretty good myself. So I think it's something that we need to get. I don't know why it hasn't been done to this point. I think it should have been done a long time ago.
Commissioner Hersom.
I have a question about the 85th percentile calculation, just so I understand this better. Is it like a bell curve where you've got two tails that encompass the 7.5 on each side, and the 25 falls right in the middle of that bell curve? Do I understand that correctly, or is there more to it?
Jerry Dubkowski, it is a bell curve, but the 80th percentile falls onto the right side of the curve. So if you have 100 cars and it's curving through here, it doesn't necessarily mean that the 50th car is in the middle. It could be based upon the 24-hour data that the 85th percentile is over here on that side of the bell. But the bottom line is yes, it's a bell curve.
Okay. So it could be a non-normal distribution, but...
Absolutely.
Okay. And just a comment, so thank you. I run through this neighborhood frequently during the week. Knowing this was on the agenda this week, I observed how many cars did not stop at stop signs going through the neighborhoods, and it is disturbing to live in this neighborhood, because I live in this neighborhood also, and have our residents, because it's not the construction people, it's our residents that blatantly disregard the law and the safety of all the other residents, both on that area of Northwest 232nd Street that we've been talking about, and even around the curve as it comes around Canterbury. I have had to jump onto the shoulder of the road several times, and I wear a bright red or yellow or green shirt when I'm running. I can't be missed, and I've had to jump out of the way. Yeah, that's right. And so, you know, I'm gonna take this public opportunity to chide my neighborhood that we are doing a bad job at being good citizens, and it's unfortunate that we have to come before the commission to beg for safety measures to be put in.
Other questions or comments from the dais? Maybe we have a policy that states the steps that that the residents go through in order to get the speed tables. Now, the data that we have in front of us doesn't support the speed tables. You guys have the power, obviously, to override that set policy and go ahead and put in the speed tables absent the data that would support it. I hear some inclination to move straight towards that. Is that the feeling on the dais? Would you like to try some of these other measures first? Commissioner Martin?
I mean, we're obviously heading into a budget cycle. This will not be the first group that comes before us. I think we are headed down the road of 10 to 15 speed bumps throughout the city, or speed tables. I think there is going to open up a floodgate of people that are going to want these. All of them may very well be warranted, but I think maybe if we can take that theory into the budgeting cycle and try to get with ASO in the interim to see if we can't get down on some of these folks, particularly, especially if there's some evidence to suggest some timing. And I agree. I don't think the averages take into account the exceptions, but I also don't want to make foolish policy based on exceptions either. So that would be potentially my 2 cents.
Before we open it back up to public comment, staff, would it be possible, some of what he talked about seemed very low financial impact, pinching the roads, using the striping, putting some, would it be possible in the interim while we have that? My only concern is if we move forward with speed tables without the study to support it, then I don't know quite what the reasoning would be to deny anyone else who comes before us. And that it may be that, hey, we can take it case by case, but I don't want the neighborhood to walk out of here tonight with no hope. Is it possible to do some striping and some pinching that are low budgetary impacts while we work this out?
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor. I think that if the data represents what it does, if the commission's direction is we're going to do something for traffic calming, our policy doesn't really speak to other alternatives, but staff go back and come in with a couple of, on a very short time frame, come in with some alternatives about what we should do on 232nd, potentially 233rd, and while we're talking about it, we may as well acknowledge that there are folks complaining about 238th as well.
I was going to throw that one in there too.
What we could do, kind of maybe not ranking in terms of preference, but in terms of cost and permanency. You know, what could you do on the striping? It occurs to me on 232nd that we also have a road parking issue, that if we designated the entire east side of the road, where there are very little driveways, as street parking, that has the effect that our professional engineer spoke of tightening down the road, making the corridor narrower, so it has that subconscious traffic calming effect to it. But we could identify that these are the least expensive and permanent. They have a traffic marking is about the extent of it, and then we get up to more and more expense and permanency with a speed table or a curb pinch or a road bulb at a stop sign. We come back with 3 or 4 of those, and these are where we'd recommend for all 3 streets. Given the nature of the intersections on 232nd, it wouldn't be a mirror image on 233rd. It'd probably be 3 speed tables on 233rd. That's about 1,500 feet, and you should space them every 500 feet. On 232nd, you'd get 1 to 2, 1 possibly, maybe 2, and then 238. So we could kind of come back with, all right, here's some recommendations. We're going through a budget period. You tell us which ones you want us to budget for, and that's exactly what we would install.
Commissioner Coleman.
Mr. Mayor, would we, you know, I thought there was going to be a motion thrown out here, but why? I know personally that the boxes were up there at the far end, north end, because that's the way I go to my house. And I know this is probably, I mean, we've had so many speed surveys done, but I don't know how far that thing works. I know, so why don't we go to 5th Avenue and say, you know, tell them that's where we want it. We want it at 5th Avenue. And I'm sure then that will project down to where the curve starts or the first stop sign, so we can get a true, unless the ASO guy comes back and says, hey, it shoots all the way down the road as far, you know, it gets it. But if they say, no, it only gets the first 200 feet or whatever, I feel that we should have another, because I understand where Mr. Shelby's at. If it's not projecting down there, they're coming around that curve, the first curve, and then they see it. And generally, if they're not from that neighborhood, they're flying right on through that stop sign and heading north. And he's right. It's the first. He's the first family to get a taste of woohoo going down that road, because it's wide. And another reason too is there's no houses on the east side of the road, so it just leaves that open to where I don't live over there on that part, but I know south, they got the 2 stop signs they got to stop at, so,
Well, if this board asks for another study, I think we can get it. I did request another study, and ASO felt confident in their first 2, so they declined.
well,
But I believe if this board directs, then they will.
if they come back and say that it projects all the way down from north, all the way down south, and it does the same thing, then it's a waste of time. But if they say no, it doesn't, then I think we need to have another study.
Was it Commissioner Hersom or Commissioner Farnsworth?
Mr. Mayor, I'm
Commissioner
following up
Hersom?
on Commissioner Coleman's statements. Maybe if we can get a schematic from the sheriff that demonstrates, where they put the box, what the range of distance was from the box that it would actually, the valid measure would be, we would all be able to interpret that better and understand, and then, we could either have confidence or no confidence in that data based on where it was collected from. My anecdotal evidence of I knew one was being conducted on 238th Terrace. I could see the box because I knew I should be looking for one as I ran by, not at driving speed.
Did it register you as you were jogging? Was it that sensitive?
We did collect
Yeah.
that piece of data that caught Commissioner Herson coming through.
Yeah, the 5.5
At a
mile.
pretty, yeah, at a
5.5
pretty good
miles
pace
an
for
hour,
a
yeah.
runner.
That brought that averages down.
Yeah, I brought the average. And so I would like to see that schematic, and I could follow up with getting one more valid, then having us coach where we want it placed. My other questions then is, if we put speed tables on 232nd, the unintended consequences of additional traffic on 233rd Terrace. I've seen people talking about going around the loop on Northwest 5th Avenue to 4th Avenue, and that's getting built out. I think there's 20 houses maybe left, or 20 lots left to build out on that. 238 certainly be an issue, but my bigger question is, will we take speed tables based on applications by citizen groups on a per street basis then?
That's why
going
we came up
forward?
with this policy, because before the policy, it was whoever called and complained the most, and there was no real rhyme or reason to how we were approaching speed tables. And speed tables, as I'm sure the engineer can tell you, are a highly controversial, and once they start going, people will be calling on a pretty regular basis wanting one for their neighborhood, which is why we came up with a policy, so that we would have some data to move forward, because doing one at $5,000 to $7,000 maybe not that big a deal. As Commissioner Martin said, once you open that floodgate, it can turn into 4, 5, 15 a year that are requesting it.
Right.
So that was the whole intention of coming up with the policy in the first place. Commissioner Farnsworth, did you have a?
I was going to ask you what the cost of the speed tables were, but I guess you just answered that, $7,000. And my thoughts on it are, I would rather have that than have people speeding through somebody's neighborhood. And the pinching and all this other stuff is like, I think, you're just putting a Band-Aid on, and I think that something more drastic needs to be done for the safety of those citizens.
Commissioner Martin?
I think at a minimum, if we can call and get in touch with ASO to try to do some more enforcement on the issue, because as far as I know, personal responsibility and people actually being courteous to somebody else is free. It doesn't cost $5,000. It doesn't cost $7,000 to put in a speed bump. If people will just be courteous, stop at the stop signs, and be aware that they're in a neighborhood. I mean, it's not 50 miles an hour for a reason. It's not 40 miles an hour for a reason. It's 25 miles an hour for a reason. It's because Shelby's kids live there. It's because, John, I don't know if you have any kids, because they live there. And it's in a neighborhood. It's tight for a reason, so that there's some benefits to living in a neighborhood. But some of the costs of living in the neighborhood is maybe it takes you a little bit longer to get from the back of the neighborhood to the front. And if you don't want to abide by that, don't move to the neighborhood. Go someplace else, and so be it. But the common courtesy here is free, and I would encourage people, if they don't want to do that, then maybe they need to get a speeding ticket from ASO.
Mr. Manager.
Mr. Mayor, with regards to the city's policy and with how DOT and how traffic engineering works, that 85th percentile recognizes that there are people that are never going to abide by the speed limit, and there are people that are never going to drive the speed limit because they're overly cautious. So DOT never sets a speed limit for what 100% of drivers will do. The 85th percentile is what 85% of the drivers are doing, and that's how they set the speed limit. And this is kind of an engineering thing, and you know, so I just kind of want to get that out there. The traffic calming under this instance isn't warranted by any definition that a traffic engineer will put out there. The data shows that. We can refine where the location is, but we had a special meeting with ASO to follow through on that, and I wish they had left the map and we'd have a red dot on there. But according to them, I mean, the name of their device is a Speed Spy, because what we had in the old days was a big old wagon that had ASO painted on the side, and it had flashing, and when you were above the speed limit, the sign started splashing at you. And then when the data came back, it was always compliant every time. And it's like, well, daggum, I know there's people speeding there, so they came up with this Speed Spy. We verified that it was installed properly. So we're happy to do another one. We're also happy for this board to exercise its discretion to direct the installation of speed tables and anything else. I think my caution is to suggest that speed tables are warranted in this according to a traffic engineer's world. Now, because there's not a street in Newberry where 100% of the traffic goes at the posted speed limit that I'm aware of. There's not a state highway or anything like that. And so if we want to do something to calm traffic further to get 100% compliant, that's fine. But I just want to distinguish between what is warranted in a traffic engineer's world and what's discretionary that we may decide to do because we love our community and we're worried about the children on these streets.
Commissioner Coleman.
I think going on, I guess putting it around Northwest Fifth Avenue is really, to have one more study. I know there's been two there, but I think that's going to have everybody's mind right if they come back and it's closer to the front of the neighborhood there at Northwest Fifth or Northwest 4th Avenue. I really come prepared to make a motion, but I mean, the traffic study right now does not warrant to put anything there, not one thing. So even though I live in the neighborhood, it's a slippery slope right this second as Commissioner Martin said. I mean, now we're going to open the floodgates for everybody. And here, well, that other traffic study didn't warrant it. So before we go any further, I think we need to have one that's halfway down that road, and then let's compare then. That's where I'm at.
Well, we've got some folks in the audience that'd like to ask some questions. Before we have them line up, I just want you guys to think about my initial question, which was in the interim, if we can do some striping and those kind of things, maybe because right now, based on our policy, what the city manager and what some of you have said, it is limiting. But that doesn't limit us from trying some of these other things in the process as we work through budget season that we can perhaps get on in a very expeditious manner. So think about that. Let's let some folks from the public come up and we'll line up.
Yeah, good evening, Commissioner, Mayor. My name is Naeem Urchin, citizen of Newberry. I live in Oakview Village, right across the street from Oakview Middle. And narrowing a road, our road is private. So it's not your problem, it's my problem. It's the HOA's problem. However, people think it's nice to use that private road to cut through for the middle school traffic. And I've seen people hit 40, 50 miles an hour on this almost a one-lane street. I also have my son, Adrian, that loves to ride his bike to elementary school. Guess what's also a drag strip in the morning? 15th Avenue. You talk about caring for the kids. I agree on the speed table. I think it's appropriate. But then, Tim Martin, I have to agree with you on here. At what point can we budget to say, hey, we need one here, we need maybe two or three there. What about 15th Avenue where the elementary school is at? Because Deputy Casey Hamilton will tell you how many times he's seen people not even obey the speed limit for the school zone. Speed limit, stop sign, at my age, I respect it. When I was 19, it was a suggestion. I didn't stop. Yellow meant hurry up so you don't catch the red. So
We know we have a judge, a future judge.
Oh, he'll pull my
here.
record. Yeah, thank you. So I agree. I have a toddler that loves to run out in the middle of the road. And I've yelled at drivers to stop. But didn't we just pay ASO hundreds of thousands of dollars for extra coverages? I asked an ASO deputy one time, can you help me with this? And you know what he did? He did the nice thing, because Catch More Bees with Honey, every morning he would sit right there and stop people from hauling butt through my neighborhood.
Thank you, sir.
So, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Shelby Powell here again. Thank you. These are great points for discussion. I would like to ask the commission, Mayor, how many neighborhoods or streets rather have submitted petitions?
Since we've had this policy, I think you're the first one to get this far in the process. We may have, I know the other street is, Jamie would have two. We have one more street that's gotten this far.
They've actually completed the petition.
Correct.
So I think that kind of handles the floodgate issue. If there's only 2 people who have ever completed this process, the bar is extremely high. You have to get 60% approval on your street plus 90% participation. I have 20 people who live on my road. It took a team of us 3 weeks to collect the necessary signatures. I don't see you getting a flood of inquiries that are actually going to come to fruition. So the other thing I'd like to point out is that we already discussed that the stop signs, as the engineer points out, are not very effective. They're a least effective method, I think is what you said. Or, I'm sorry, it was what I thought I heard the engineer say.
His least favorite.
Least favorite, fair enough. So then the other thing I'd like to encourage the commission to do is to look at the past survey data. We have a survey that was done further south on our road that showed that the speed was above the 85th percentile. That data, I think, reflects more accurately what's happening on our street. Yes, there were stop signs installed afterward, but the studies that were done after the stop signs were placed further north on the road, and they didn't take into account some of the longer stretches of road that get that speed going. And then lastly, we're having this big conversation about getting another speed study, drawing this out even longer. This whole process was created. This resolution 2015-28 was created for 232nd Terrace. We were the ones who started this. We've been coming back to the commission now for 3 years trying to resolve this issue. And so I would encourage not to go back and ask for yet another study. I would ask for action immediately, because this is an issue that is worthy of your attention and of your budget. We're one of 2 people now that have completed this process, and the amount of money we're talking about is $4,200 for 2 speed tables. Is that correct?
No, it's roughly $6,000 per speed table.
$12,000 for 2 speed tables. It's relatively minimal. Relatively minimal. And this is something we've been begging the commission for 3 years. The policy was created for us. I would really strongly ask for action today.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Oh.
Bonnie Hauser, citizen. I was not going to speak on this issue, but the more I hear about this opening of the floodgate, you guys don't need to do this yet, because it will. I feel for you guys. I have a child too. Live on the only dirt road still in the city limits.
Direct your comments to me.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, but I get where you're coming from. But I do not think you guys need to do that. And $12,000 may seem like a drop in the bucket to some, but there may be other things that more than 20 citizens could benefit from that we could put that $12,000 towards. If it's room in the budget to do it, great. If we've already waited 3 years, I don't see what's so bad with maybe waiting and getting another study on it. I don't live in that neighborhood, but usually if something affects me, I figure a way to do it myself. So I don't know if that is an option for that neighborhood to possibly contribute a little, or maybe do some matching funds, or I don't know, that's just a suggestion, but I say do not pass anything to put that money towards that at this time. My opinion. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
John Zupanzik. All right, one last time. I believe the engineer in his study, there's a total construction cost at the end of the study, and I believe it was $4,200. So it's not $12,000. I believe that was just for 232nd Terrace. I'm not too sure. It doesn't really go into detail about if it's for both speed tables or if it's for one. From what I understand, it's for both. So I seem to remember that we had, somebody was saying that we had $1 million surplus or something like that.
1.5.
1.5. Okay, so
We're very excited about that.
I'm happy about that. I'm a
you
strong
should be.
conservative.
Yep.
I'm very happy. However, I am also in favor of legislating when it's needed, and if my math is correct, and I am an engineering student, so it might, I don't know. But I was doing this off $1 million surplus. That's 0.042% of your total yearly surplus. I mean, that's all I have to say. I think that's $4,200 is not a lot to keep people from possibly getting killed. So,
Just for the record, it's in the report. It was $1,500 for the engineering, $42 for the actual construction per, or
Yep.
was that for both?
That was for both. All right. And my experience, the last time I bid speed tables, they were unit priced at about $3,000 each. So for two, we installed we installed two. We paid $6,000.
And you said the distance on 232, we would have to have 2 or 3?
I think that 232 supports. The traffic engineer says 2, and he wins. I think it gets tight. If you get spacing any tighter than every 400 feet, there are some liability issues associated with that.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to get, we have an 800-foot stretch without a stop sign. So I think that we'd likely get one speed table in the middle, potentially two, if Jerry seals it and says he's comfortable with that.
One of the other extenuating things with the location of it, you don't want to locate it adjacent to anyone's driveway. While you would make everyone else happy, you would get that one resident upset. So that kind of limits the placement on that straightaway.
Okay.
And every straightaway in town where we have, 85-foot lot lines, it becomes a tight squeeze with a 24-foot driveway cut. It's always a tight squeeze about where do we get it? Where do we put it in there that doesn't impact somebody's driveway? They get frustrated backing out of a driveway and up on top of the tabletop every time.
Okay.
What's the lifespan of a table, speed table?
Speed table.
It's not a one-time cost.
My experience is that, they last as long as the asphalt. I mean, Jerry has more experience than me. The biggest maintenance issue is making sure that the chevrons stay painted with non-reflective and that the signs stay fresh. That if, Jerry didn't mention it, I don't know what his experience is. I generally get a lot of feedback about the speed tables being launching pads. People didn't see them at night and they hit them they didn't reduce their speed and it them losing control temporarily. So that when you're a city, the liability becomes were the chevrons there and were they reflective so that people could see them. Most standards say you need a street light adjacent for the same reason, and the signs need to have all the reflective. So we spend more time paying attention to those kind of maintenance items, which aren't that much. Usually if you get a speed table in, it gets refreshed when you overlay the street and you do a resurfacing project.
Yeah, Jerry Dubkowski, that's correct. The speed table will have the life of the asphalt. So when you resurface the road, the speed table gets resurfaced with it. And you do have to have the reflective pavement markings actually on the little 6-foot section that you go up. There'll be little chevrons that are reflective, so your headlights will let you know that there's something in the road ahead of you. But the resurfacing will take care of the speed hump.
There's a slide that shows what the chevrons look like. Keep going.
Commissioner Farnsworth.
I was just curious, are roundabouts just cost prohibitive, or is that a possibility?
Roundabout in the traditional sense, like what we're looking for State Road 26, is right-of-way prohibitive and cost prohibitive. But I think that Mr. Dapkowski could speak to maybe some sort of a median, like a planted, raised median that requires, you'd have to move the curbs out on either side of the road, so you got to do, it's a horizontal deflection of traffic versus a vertical deflection like you would get in a speed table.
Jerry Depkowski again. A roundabout is a much larger type of a traffic circle, I guess you could say, which, as you mentioned, probably requires right-of-way, a lot of drainage improvements. To the west of this, on 3rd, you actually have a small traffic circle that's there right now that you go around, and as you go a little further west, there's a larger one, which clearly slows you down as you go through there. The difference on 232 is you might be able to put one where the stop sign is, because it looks like the right-of-way that you own to the west and east of 232 might accommodate a small traffic circle there, but not a roundabout. A roundabout is a much larger device that accommodates a lot of traffic. A traffic circle is kind of like what you have already on 3rd, I think it is. Yes, 3rd.
What about where, I don't know the road, but once you get around the curve and the road coming from the west connects to 232nd, would a roundabout be feasible there? Or a traffic circle be feasible there?
There's a long history on roundabouts and how they work and how they don't work. It's typically, you got to make sure that you have the right distance of right-of-way so that a school bus can get around them, and large vehicles, a fire truck, etc. I do not know that answer because I haven't really looked at that intersection. But you got to be cautious because you need to let large vehicles get through. They're moving vans that come into the neighborhoods. They have to work around these traffic circles or roundabouts also. I do not know that answer. I haven't looked at it that close.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, just to move this forward along, do we have anyone else in the public that would like to address? Yeah, I think you had about 30 seconds left on your last one, so come on down.
John Zupancic, once again. Those traffic circles on 3rd Avenue, people have jumped those, speeding through there. So that's all I have to say about those. And they are very cost prohibitive, as opposed to $4,200 for 2 speed tables.
Okay, so I've got 2 feelings on the dice. I've got one who's ready to move forward with the speed tables. We've got some feeling about asking ESO for another study specifically with the camera placed at 5th Avenue. And you have my request that even if we're not ready to move forward with the speed tables tonight, we at least go ahead and authorize staff to do some of the striping issues that we have talked about tonight. Am I summarizing that accurately? Can you come up? Okay, come up and...
Shelby Powell again. I just wanted to clarify. We're actually talking about possibly doing a second study or a new study on 3rd Avenue, not 5th. 5th was where it was previously.
5th was where the camera was, and is that... I can't...
I just want to make sure we were clear, right? Yeah.
Looks like 4th. Is that 3rd you're saying? The second one?
So from south to north, it's 3rd, 4th, 5th. So we want to go further south.
We want to come further south. Is
down
that...
toward 3rd. Right where I live.
Isn't that right where the stop sign is?
That
Wouldn't
is
they
right.
be slowing down when they come to the stop sign? I thought we wanted it in the middle of the...
Somewhere further south. It's not a perfect world, right? But the people who fly down that road who don't care about the stop signs, they're not stopping there.
Okay. All right. Thank you for the clarification. Okay, those are the 2 feelings, and I will entertain a motion. Whoever is quickest to the mic can find out if their motion lives or dies. Commissioner Farnsworth.
I move that we direct staff to bring back a cost analysis of putting speed humps in both 232nd and 233rd Terrace.
I would like staff to use white font on these roads in the future, just as an aside, but that one and like, well, you just threw a whole other thing in there. Okay. I have a motion to put speed for the staff to do a speed analysis. Or you want another study? You just want the cost. I mean, I think we've ascertained the cost, right? If it's 2 on 232nd, it would be 2 on 233. So you're looking at
Mr.
Mr.
Mayor,
Manager?
I would disagree with that unless the stop sign is removed at Fifth Avenue, there'd be a different number of speed tables on 232nd than there would 233rd. I estimate 3 speed tables on 232 and, on 233. There'd be 3 speed table minimum and 2 speed tables on 232nd. So we're looking at 5 for those 2 streets.
But you want staff to come back with that number. Do I have but not just come back with a number? That's your motion? Do I have a second for the motion for staff to come back with a cost analysis of putting speed tables on 2 roads, 232nd and 233? Hearing none, the motion dies for lack of a second. I'll entertain another motion. Commissioner Coleman.
I make a motion that we still do that study. I don't care if it's 3rd, 4th, or 5th.
Well, let's just put them all up and down.
That we do a study, and if it's 3rd, that's what it is, and with ASO.
Would you like to include the striping in your motion?
Yeah, why not? Let's approve the striping too.
Okay.
But that's wait a minute, time out on my motion then.
Well, you're still in the middle of making the motion.
I'm in the middle of it.
It's okay.
Hey, are we gonna put parking? Is that what kind of striping we're looking at?
Well, I think what
here?
the motion would be to authorize staff to figure that out.
Figure that out?
To
Okay,
figure that out.
that's my motion.
Okay, so I have a motion to direct ASO to put the camera at 3rd and direct staff to figure out the best way to pinch and stripe and narrow that road up in the interim as an immediate. Do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
I have a second from Commissioner Herson. Any more conversation on the motion on the floor? Any public comment on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Roll call. Commissioner Coleman?
Aye.
Commissioner Herson?
Aye.
Commissioner Farnsworth? No. Commissioner Martin? Motion passes 3-1. Thank you all. Thank you, sir. We will have a follow-up on this one shortly. Okay, and I believe Director Travis will come down and give us our recreational annual overview.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Had I known I was following speed tables, I probably wouldn't have prepared 30 slides. Kidding.
Well, you cut it down to 15.
I'm kidding. I've only got 10 slides. After that, I'm going to ask that after I provide you with the presentation, staff's recommendation is to approve the proclamation designating July as Parks and Recreation Month. An overview of our organizational chart. Nothing's really changed since the last time you've seen this chart, except for the branch of Diamond Sports Park is gone. We no longer have a programmer handling that or any part-time program assistants. We moved any part-time assistants that we had at Diamond over to Easton into our pool of programmers. We offer youth sports 3 seasons, spring, summer, and fall. We offer baseball and softball through the Babe Ruth organization, t-ball, basketball, soccer, and volleyball, and flag football through Act 4. And we have tackle football and cheerleading that we will be participating in the Pop Warner Football League. That's new this year. We're working through that now. I think it's going to be really successful. We've heard a lot of good things from a lot of people, especially people that have been traveling away from Newberry to play because they like Pop Warner. So hoping for good things there. This is a chart of our participation numbers. Major sports, you'll see that 300 up there is middle school baseball. That primarily ran out of Diamond Sports Park, which we no longer have. I think there is opportunity to still be a part of that. We'll see as we get closer how that's going to fall out. I think it has to do with maybe who comes in and runs Diamond. Maybe we can work with them, and maybe we can still get some of those kids participating in middle school sports. Soccer in the spring, soccer in the fall, and tackle football in the fall. Major drivers of those numbers. The year-round and summer, those are our after-school and summer camp, and then the winter is basketball. We're offering some adult programs. We just brought co-ed softball back here after we got out Diamond, and it did fairly well. First season, 15 teams, and looking to potentially grow. We may do it in the fall, just depending on field space and availability, as we have a lot of soccer in the fall. We have elder care programming. We run bingo at the municipal building.
Hang on one second, Traffic Commissioner Farnsworth.
I was just curious how many teams were out at Diamond?
In the summer, we probably had about 20 to 25, depends. Some that played out there, they didn't want to travel to Newberry. I think 15 was a good number to start with, especially in the summer. Numbers kind of dropped a little bit, so maybe in the fall, if we actually have field availability, we'll get some numbers, maybe upwards of 20. We've had a lot of teams tell us, hey, we'll be back in the fall. Just couldn't get everybody together. We also did Wednesday and Thursday night at Diamond, and we just didn't have enough teams to do that. So we had a few teams drop out because they couldn't play Thursdays.
Mm-hmm.
So we also offered kickball. About 4 or 5 teams signed up, but not enough to run a competitive league. So we'll kick that out there again. Maybe like alternate. Maybe do, in the fall, maybe try kickball again, that kind of thing.
How many, which fields are being utilized?
We use the Easton Newberry Sports Complex, the 2 large fields there, and also Freddie Wormack Park. It's getting some use. The Martin Luther King Jr. Community Center, we offer some cooking classes, art classes, and workout classes. That's run by individuals and organizations. We get minimal participation. We're looking for ways to kind of improve that, maybe find something that's attractive to folks who have stuff in the evening that want to come out. We're going to try to push that. Adult sports. Again, like I said, these are numbers based on what we had roughly around Diamond. The summer numbers just about accurate. And then the 60 for cornhole, I think that is a mid-range estimate. I've had a lot of people talk about it, and we're going to start that in the next couple weeks. So if anybody's interested, we're going to run that at the Easton Newberry Sports Complex.
There might be a challenge issued in that particular vein. Is it Wednesday nights?
We're going to try to do it on Wednesday night.
If you have a free Wednesday night, I throw a pretty mean beanbag. I doubt anyone on the dais could take me.
Here we go.
If it's anything like the Chili's, should not be much competition.
Ouch. Oh, man. Must be getting late in the evening now. Go ahead, Travis. Please move us on.
After school and summer camp program. We have roughly 50 to 55 participants in the after school and the summer camp program. I think that we had 51 K through 4th for summer camp and 16 for the teen camp, so numbers rose a little bit. We offer day camps, and also on holidays we run some day camps. Park locations, we have East Newberry Sports Complex, Champions Park, and then our in-town parks, Lois Fort Park, Jimmy Durden Park, Freddie Wormack Park, and then the Martin Luther King Jr. Community Center. We're going to put a lot of focus on these parks, as now we don't have to maintain Diamond, so we're going to focus a lot on these parks and put some effort into them. Facility partners, Champions Park. The rest of these partners are at Easton, Easton Foundations, Pro Ball, M2 Battle Sports, the RC Park, the Star Park, and the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. Current and upcoming projects, wild spaces, public places, we've talked a lot on that. That's $3 million that we have allocated to those facilities listed. The FERDAP grant is from Martin Luther King Jr. Park, and we have outdoor restrooms and playground. Both of those are in the manufacturing stage. I actually spoke to both of them today. Playground is an ETA of maybe a month out, and then shortly after that, we'll bring in the restroom facility.
Is that a month out to install it,
from
or
now,
done
yeah.
manufacturing?
Done manufacturing, and then they said just a week or so to deliver and coordinate. It's a
So
lot
end
to
of the
get in there.
summer, we'll have playground equipment and bathrooms.
Yes, sir. And then our PRO, Parent Recreation Organization, we are going to start ramping that up. Going to have another meeting here in July with our leaders and kind of get that going so that when school starts and our fall sports kick in, we'll have our board set. Questions?
Commissioner Coleman.
I didn't see in there the 4 fields.
Those 4 fields will be in the under Eastern Newbury Sports Complex, the $3 million.
Out of wild spaces.
Wild spaces.
Are we?
We haven't started those yet.
Okay.
Hoping soon. We need field space,
Yeah.
especially for soccer, maybe lacrosse. It's the only thing that would prevent us from running, adult sports in the fall. Field space.
Pretty certain the master plan calls for planning to occur next fiscal year and construction to be commenced the following fiscal year.
It does.
Any other questions, Commissioner Martin?
Travis, I'm counting about 900 people between fall, winter, spring, and summer. Do you have any data that suggests how many of those are maybe duplicates or anything like that?
I don't. I could get that. I could run through the system and figure out who plays multiple sports. I would say a large number of those probably are multiple sport participants.
Okay. And you said the 300 in the spring is almost totally Diamond baseball?
That was middle school program at Diamond.
Okay. And have you been able to drill down whether these numbers include, well, I'm sure they do, but what the breakdown is of citizen, non-citizen?
I have not. I think that a lot of them are citizens from the ones I've spoken to. And then with Pop Warner, I've spoken to a lot of families that live in Newberry, but they play elsewhere. So I think that I expect the tackle football numbers to rise with citizens of Newberry, because many of them have told me they travel outside of Newberry to play football, especially with Pop Warner. So I think those numbers should increase. I think we'll know more about that too. We have some open registrations, dates, Saturdays. First one we didn't have much participation, but I think as we get closer, we'll have some people start ramping up, and hopefully all the media we put on social, like on Facebook and stuff, is going to start attracting folks to sign up.
Is that all your questions, Commissioner Martin? Any other questions from the dais? Okay. How's the parent recreation organization coming, Travis? We got a lot of volunteers. I know we had a lot of folks want to volunteer for that. Have those folks
I think we will.
materialized?
I think we'll have someone involved with each of our main sports. As far as drilling it down a little bit, we'll kind of see where we fall as far as participation is concerned. We're getting a lot of participation with Pop Warner. A lot of folks that are new, and a lot of the coaches and stuff that we had previously. I think that'll be helpful. As far as individual sports, we have a lot of people that just depends on what kind of time commitment we can provide. But I think we're in good shape.
All right. Any questions from the dais? Any questions from the public about Parks and Rec report? Hearing none, I believe we have a proclamation. Mr. I'm sorry. You were behind him. I didn't see you. Come on down, Ms. Bonnie. Don't forget to introduce yourself.
Bonnie Hauser. This isn't really a question, so I hope it's okay to say this. I have been a huge voice regarding our rec department over the years, and I don't think they get kudos when they need them. So I am here to provide some kudos for our rec department, amazingly.
You're making my night.
Travis has been so easy to get a hold of. We'll call you back. We'll actually take the time to listen to your concerns. I can hear in his voice when I speak to him and he tells me what's kind of in the pipeline, the excitement. I can hear the caring. And I'm just so excited to hear that because I was in here in tears with my mom probably a year ago discussing it. I unfortunately have not been able to have my kid involved since Travis has taken over because there were no softball teams this year, but we're hoping to remedy that. And he knows that I am more than willing to help lend a hand. And I just wanted to say kudos because I know they probably don't get to hear that a whole lot, but I think you guys have the right man for the job, and it's just nice to be able to communicate with someone. So communication is key.
Thank you for that comment.
That's all I wanted to say.
You made all of our nights here
You've done a great job.
That deserves a round.
Thank you all.
Well done. And that's a great segue into a proclamation declaring July as Parks and Recreation Month. Mr. Attorney, will you read that proclamation in for us?
Certainly will, Mr. Mayor. This is a proclamation of the City of Newberry. People who cannot find time for recreation are obliged sooner or later to find time for illness, said John Wanamaker, who was the Postmaster General of the United States in 1889, by the way. Whereas our parks and recreation are vitally important to establishing and maintaining the quality of life in our communities, ensuring the health of all of our citizens, and contributing to the economic and environmental well-being of a community and region. Whereas parks and recreation programs build healthy, active communities that aid in the prevention of chronic disease, provide therapeutic recreation services for those who are mentally or physically disabled, and also improve the mental and emotional health of all citizens. And whereas parks and recreation programs increase a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. Whereas parks and recreation, natural recreation areas improve water quality, protect groundwater, prevent flooding, improve the quality of the air we breathe, provide vegetative buffers to development, and produce habitat for wildlife. Whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for our children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. Whereas Newberry, Florida recognizes the benefits derived from parks and recreation resources, now therefore be it resolved by our mayor, Jordan Marlowe, that July is recognized as Parks and Recreation Month of the City of Newberry. Signature for Jordan Marlowe, our mayor, and attested by the clerk of the City Commission, the City of Newberry, Florida, Judy S. Rice, our city clerk. The appropriate motion is pass the proclamation as read by its entirety.
Do I have a motion from Commissioner Coleman?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Herson. All those in favor of the proclamation as read, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. All right, congratulations, Travis. You have a whole month. At this point, we have an opportunity for citizen comments. These are the 2-minute non-controversial comments. Anybody who wants to tell us about a garage sale or a lost dog, and you haven't done it on the forum yet, please come on down. And seeing none, we'll move on to our consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? I have a motion from Commissioner Farnsworth, second from Commissioner Martin. The chair will note the absence of Commissioner Coleman. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. All right, that will move us to our public hearings and ordinances. Item 8 is the legislative public hearing and second reading of 2018-07. Mr. Thomas, are you going to lead us through this?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. And the applicant, Mr. Abdi, just stepped outside. He'll be right back, but he is here and he just wanted to say hello. But this is the second reading for Ordinance 2018-07. It's a voluntary application for annexation in the City of Newberry. The city has notified the county 10 days prior to the original public notice. There was no response from the county. Once the property is annexed into the city, assuming tonight the commission votes in favor, then we'll go to the next two steps, which are the amendment of the future land use and the rezoning from Alachua County categories to City of Newberry categories. And so, and then once that's complete, of course, it'll be transmitted to the state for notification purposes. The property is located down just north of the Watermelon Pond area, wildlife management area, and it is 5 acres with adjacency to the city municipal boundaries on 2 sides. The staff recommendation is to enact Ordinance 2018-07 on second reading.
Okay, do you have any questions for staff? Does the public have any questions for staff? Hearing none, Mr. Attorney, would you?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this is ordinance 2018-07, an ordinance of the City of Newberry, Florida, annexing a certain portion of unincorporated Alachua County, specifically tax parcel number 02667-002-000, as more specifically described in this ordinance, and petitioned for by the property owners pursuant to Section 171.044 of the Florida statutes, making certain findings, providing for land use, zoning, and land development regulations, and enforcement of same, providing directions to the clerk of the commission, providing a severability clause, and providing an immediate effective date. Appropriate motion is pass ordinance 2018-07 upon its second reading by title only.
I have a motion from Commissioner Martin, second from Commissioner Coleman. Any other comments or questions about the motion on the floor? Commissioner Coleman? No? Any questions or comments from the public about the motion on the floor?
And Mr. Mayor, Mr. Abdi just stepped back in, so just say
Welcome,
hello
sir.
and-
We appreciate you joining us. Okay, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Our next item is a quasi-judicial. I'm going to go ahead and read our procedure into the record. This procedure is to ensure that the applicant provides a complete presentation of their request prior to any testimony being provided by the staff. All public testimony will be taken under oath. Everyone testifying will be subject to cross-examination. All documents and exhibits shall be entered into evidence. The giving of opinion testimony is limited to experts, and closing arguments will be limited to the evidence of record. The procedure we're going to follow this evening is we will first hear from the applicant with no time limit. Then the applicant will be subject to cross-examination. Then the staff will enter the staff report into the record and answer questions. The applicant will have the opportunity for rebuttal of any testimony against the application, and the floor will then be open for public comment, with each comment being limited to 5 minutes. Members of the public will have an opportunity to question the applicant or staff. Then the applicant will have the opportunity for closing arguments. Then the public hearing will be closed, and the commission will enter into deliberations. Before we administer the oath, do we have any ex parte communication that needs to be divulged at this point in time? Commissioner Coleman? Ex parte? You want to think about that while I go to Commissioner Hirschman? Do you have any ex parte? Okay.
None.
None? Commissioner Farnsworth? Commissioner Martin? I have not as well. Madam Clerk, could you administer the oath? If you have any inkling that you will speak on this, if you could rise now so our clerk could administer the oath, even if you're not planning on it, that way just save us a little bit of time. Thank you.
Brian Thomas. I do.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, does the applicant have a presentation? Then we'll go to number 2. Does anyone have any questions for the applicant? And we will go to number 3. Let's jump straight to the staff. You enter the staff report for us, please, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is also a second reading, Ordinance 2018-08. It's a request by Mr. Smith to vacate a public utility easement on a portion of property that he owns. It's a utility easement that was from an old right-of-way that was abandoned in 1985, but the utility easement was maintained. The utility department director has done the locates on the site, has not found any existing city facilities, has approved the vacation of the PUE, and next request is for the commission to finalize the approval of the PUE vacation via ordinance. The parcel is The triangular piece there, it's just south of the Oakview Village neighborhood. It's bordered on the east by State Road 45 and on the north by southwest 15th Avenue. And as you can see by the shaded area there, the public utility easement kind of runs right through the center of the property. The need to vacate the PUE so that he can actually construct a building over that area.
Okay.
And so, like I said, it was vacated in 1985. We've maintained the easement. The utility department has confirmed there's no existing city utilities. There's a potential that there may be cable TV or AT&T lines. That'll be located as the construction proceeds. And the utility director did not anticipate the city would need the public utility easement in the future. So staff recommends approval of the vacation request for Ordinance 2018-08.
Okay. Did the applicant hear anything you'd like the chance to rebut? Thank you. All right, the floor will be open for public comment at this time. Anyone have any comment to make on this? Hearing none, would you like to make a closing argument? Thank you. Okay, we'll now close the public hearing and the commission can enter into deliberations. Commissioners, do you have a question for applicant or staff, or would someone like to make a motion?
I had a question for
Commissioner
staff.
Farnsworth.
Is that area subdivided?
Mr. Mayor, the original plat back from 1925, that was a platted subdivision area, Sylvania Terrace, but it's since that time been redivided. It was originally part of Sylvania Terrace was what's now known as Country Way, the original Country Way. And so, but this is on the opposite side of the railroad right-of-way. It's kind of a remainder piece that was no longer necessary at that point for the neighborhood. But those old plat lines basically are no longer in effect. They're still shown on the as part of the original plat, though.
And the gentleman owns the entire piece of property.
Yes, sir.
Any other?
I'll go ahead and put the,
Oh, yes, thank you,
the
Mr.
ordinance on the floor. Ordinance 2018-08, an ordinance of the City of Newberry, Florida, vacating the City of Newberry's existing public utility easement across Olive John Street, located on Alachua County tax parcel 02530-004-000, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2018-08 upon its second reading by title only.
I have a motion from Commissioner Martin, a second from Commissioner Herson. Any other questions or comment on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Our third item is another quasi-judicial. Bear with me while I go through this process again. The procedure we will follow tonight is that all public testimony will be taken under oath. Everyone testifying will be subject to cross-examination. All documents and exhibits shall be entered into evidence. The giving of opinion testimony is limited to experts, and closing arguments will be limited to the evidence of record. The procedure we'll follow this evening is that we will first hear from the applicant with no time limit. The applicant will then be subject to cross-examination. Staff will enter the staff report of the record and answer the questions. Applicant will then have the opportunity for rebuttal of any testimony against the applicant. The floor will then be open for public comment. Each presentation limited to 5 minutes. Members of the public will have an opportunity to question the applicant or staff. The applicant will have an opportunity for closing arguments. The public hearing will then be closed and the commission will enter into deliberations. While the city clerk gets ready to administer the oath, does anyone have any ex parte that they'd like to? Commissioner Coleman? No? Commissioner? No. No. I have none as well. Madam Clerk, would you please administer the oath one more time? Brian is still under the oath.
Yes,
Any
Mr.
other people think they may want to speak on this item, please stand now. Okay, Brian's still under oath. I think we're good to go. Go ahead. Do we have the applicant presentation here?
The applicant does not have a presentation. He
Okay.
was unable to be here this evening. But we'll go ahead with the staff presentation.
We're going to go right to step 3, and the staff will enter the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is first reading of Ordinance 2018-10. It's an application by Norita Davis for a amendment to the future land use plan map of the City of Newberry Comprehensive Plan. It would be to change the future land use category on 173.38 acres from agriculture to corporate park. This would be the first application of our new corporate park land use category. The subject property is directly east of the Canterbury Equestrian Center. It's just north of State Road 26. The land use change, well, go through the future land use. The surrounding land use right now, it's agriculture. It is surrounded by either agriculture on the north and east, a little bit of commercial on the south, and then agriculture and low-density residential land uses to the west. The zoning that surrounds the property currently, Newberry Oaks is single-family residential 2. Canterbury is actually planned development. It's agricultural zoning to the north and the east, and then agricultural and commercial to the south. On June 4th, 2018, Planning and Zoning Board, the City of Newberry voted unanimously to recommend to the City Commission to approve the Ordinance 2018-10 to amend the future land use plan map, the city's comprehensive plan, from agriculture to corporate park on the 171.38 acres.
Is that the end of your presentation? Okay. And the applicant's not here, so we'll open up the floor for public comment. Does anybody have public comment on this? Hearing none, we will move to close the public hearing and the commission can enter into deliberations. Anyone have any questions for staff? Commissioner Martin.
Brian, this is citing 171 acres, but the printout from the property appraiser's website, I guess, says 77.51. Does it make a difference? Is there a clerical issue we have to worry about here?
Take a quick look through.
So page 3 of 29 on the parcel number area is 77.51. Otherwise noted elsewhere at 171 acres.
Mr. Mayor, that's a kind of an oddity of the property appraiser's website. That's not the actual amount of acreage that's in the parcel. This is the basically used for the legal description that comes off of the property appraiser's website. On the data sheet further down, it lists the actual acreage and uses for each individual bid.
Okay.
So that's a category that they use for classification purposes.
Commissioner Coleman.
Yeah, you can't go by that. That's GIS mapping. I always use that at work.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions, Commissioner Martin? Any other questions for staff? Commissioner Farnsworth?
What exactly does corporate park involve? What involves corporate park?
Mr. Mayor, the corporate park land use category is our newest category. 2016, we amended the comp plan to allow for it. Basically, this would allow for uses that a typical mixed use would not necessarily allow for. And so you can have research elements, some light industrial manufacturing elements. It's designed to facilitate building a fairly large-scale park with associated businesses within. And so it's...
you remember those 5 workshops we sat through about 2 summers ago?
It does allow for a small amount of residential, but the residential that it allows for is basically geared for people that either work in the park or are visiting the park on a temporary basis. It doesn't have large-scale residential development as a component, whereas mixed use can have a significant amount of residential.
Any other questions for staff? Mr. Attorney?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this is ordinance number 2018-10, CPA 1810, an ordinance of the City of Newberry, Florida, amending ordinance number 4-91 as amended, relating to an amendment to the future land use plan map of the City of Newberry Comprehensive Plan under the regular amendment procedures established in sections 163.3161 through 163.3215 of the Florida statutes, providing for a change in land use classification from agriculture to corporate park on certain lands within the City of Newberry, Florida, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2018-10 as read on second reading by title only.
Do I have that motion?
Motion.
I have a motion from Commissioner Hersom, a second from Commissioner Martin. Any further questions or comments on the motion on the floor? Any other questions or comments from the public on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Okay, we'll move right along to our first agenda item, which is Resolution 2018-17, supporting the creation of the Children's Trust of Alachua County. And I believe we have Ms. Dorothy Benson, is that right? Here, going to lead us through this.
Hi, good evening.
Thank you for waiting with us here tonight.
My
We'll have
name
that
is-
up for you in just a second.
Thanks. My name is Dorothy Benson, and I represent all the many different grassroots community volunteers that are working hard to bring a children's trust for Alachua County. And there's the PowerPoint. I want to just apologize for the misunderstanding. I understand this came up on June 11th. We had rescheduled, and that is a misunderstanding on my part, but I'm here tonight. I'm excited to be here and talk to you. I know it's a little late and everyone's a little tired, but this is
No,
really
ma'am.
important to those of us that have been working
You
on
have
this
our
for
full
3
attention.
years. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. First, I'd like to tell you a little bit about what a children's trust is. It is overseen by Florida statute. Ours in Alachua County will be called the Children's Trust of Alachua County. It's a local government body. It would function very much like the library district here in Alachua County that oversees funding for programs and services for children and their families. A Children's Services Council requires that programs be data-driven and respond to the needs of our local community's children. It cannot provide funding to the public schools, only to programs and organizations that support children in the time when they're not served by the schools. That's in early childhood in the first 5 years of life, in the afternoons and the summer times. And then a Children's Services Council is overseen by an independent board made up of 10 members governed by Florida statute. That would include the school board superintendent, a school board member, a county commissioner, a family court judge, and the head of the Department in Children and Families. And then there would be 5 other slots, and the county commissioners would put 3 names up for each slot, and then the governor would pick 1 name from those 3 for each of those. Those 10 members of the independent board would immediately do a needs assessment if we're successful in November, see what the community's what the needs of the community's children are, and then begin to implement programs and a systematic collaborative system of care that can serve kids in Alachua County. It is created by voter referendum and funded by a property tax. I'll get into that in just a moment. Our county commissioners have actually gone ahead and put this on the ballot, and it will be on the ballot in November. So why do we need a children's trust? We plan for everything, and we would actually like to think long-term strategically beyond year-to-year budget cycles for children in Alachua County. This would be guaranteed funding for children's needs. If budgets get tight, this funding would be guaranteed for children. Right now, the county commissioners have created a dependent Children's Services Advisory Board, and they've funded that with $1.2 million a year, focused specifically on prenatal to 5. But that funding has to be approved year after year. We'd like to identify gaps in the system that serves children, reduce duplication, encourage collaboration between the different providers that serve our children, bring together our community's resources for children in one place, and provide funding for programs for when children are not in school. We'd like to complement the school's efforts, and we think that this getting children ready for kindergarten is a big part of that. So we would like to build on current local efforts for prenatal to 5. I mentioned that our county commissioners have already funded the Dependent Children's Services Advisory Board. They have focused on 3 main areas, and everything that they do, they make everyone who comes for funding to serve children in Alachua County, they have to collaborate and come to the table together when they apply for those RFAs. So we have a newborn home visiting program. This has already begun. Everyone in Alachua County that has a newborn in Shands or North Florida or with a midwife will be offered a voluntary visit from an RN in the first week after a baby's born. We feel that this is really important to get families off to the right start. It would be kind of an extension of the birthing process. The new moms in the maternity wards would meet many of the RNs that would go out into the homes and visit them later. When you think about it, this would be universal. Everyone would have access to this. In St. Lucie County, I wrote it down because I was kind of excited about their numbers. In St. Lucie County, that's a county about our size, that 86% of the newborns received a voluntary home visit. So it's one of their most popular programs. But if a mother is having issues with postpartum depression, or if the nurse gets to the house and they find that the baby doesn't have safe sleeping arrangements, they can do something like pull a pack and play out of the trunk and provide that for that child so that they have safe sleeping arrangements. For postpartum depression, that cuts across all socioeconomic lines, and mothers really need to be connected to services if they're suffering. The second piece of that focus is transformative professional development for early child care teachers. This is really kind of exciting. We're partnering with the University of Florida Zucker Center for Excellence in Early Childhood Studies. There is really not a comprehensive professional development for child care teachers in Alachua County for the little ones, for preschoolers, from 0 to 5. And they are going to work to create the professional development and work with all of the different preschools in Alachua County. They'll have a model demonstration program, and they can push professional development out to the child care centers with the Early Learning Coalition that touches many of the child care centers in our county. And we would also like to work with parents and give them the skills that to be their own children's best first teacher and their child's best advocate. The third part is social emotional development. That's an important piece because many times people don't realize that children need mental health supports when they're young, and they always need a parent that can care for them and give them the best. So that might include mental health support, it might include substance abuse support. Whatever, to serve a child, many times you have to serve the family. So we'd like to kind of wrap our arms around kids and their parents in Alachua County. Data supports the need. Approximately 25% of our kindergartners arrive at public school not ready to learn, and in many schools that number is higher. The racial disparities in educational achievement in Alachua County are among some of the highest in the state. We need to figure out how to address those issues. There were over 1,200 public school students that were retained or not promoted to the next grade in 2015-2016. And when you consider that it can cost $10,000 a year for a child to go through a one-year public school, that really does start to add up, and earlier support can help reduce those numbers and save money down the road. Research supports the idea that improved early learning and after-school programs will improve the educational outcomes of students. In Alachua County, the third grade English language arts assessment, 44% of our district students were scored below satisfactory or inadequate in 2016-17. When you look at it in terms of economic status, children who are on free and reduced lunch, that number jumps, you can't see it well on the screen, but it jumps to 63.3% of our students in our district on free and reduced lunch were assessed at below satisfactory or inadequate. And this actually is a chart that shows the non-promotions. You can see in kindergarten, some of the children come to kindergarten and they're not ready to learn, and they're retained. It goes to third grade. Well, they take that English language arts and assessment, and they can't pass it, and they're retained. Large number retained in third grade. We have some social promotions, and then the non-promotions or retentions climb until you get to the 12th grade. So we believe that we can reduce the retentions and remediation, saving taxpayers money in the long run and benefiting our children. Just in terms of return on investment, Florida spends about less than $2,500 a year on VPK, pre-K for children, but more than $69,000 to incarcerate a juvenile. I love Sheriff Darnell, but I'd rather invest in children early than build another wing onto the jail. 8 other counties in the state of Florida have it. This is an entity that our Florida legislature has made available to counties in Florida. We won't be reinventing the wheel. Those are the 8 counties that actually have independent councils. Martin and St. Lucie are very similar in size and funding to ours. And there was one more thing that I wanted to remember to tell you about that slide. I'll probably remember it and tell you in a moment. You can tell I'm not a professional. I'm a community volunteer.
You're doing great.
How much will it cost? That half mil is equal to 50 cents in taxes for every $1,000 of taxable value of a property. It's a modest investment, we believe. 50% of our county's homeowners will contribute less than $37 a month annually, or about $3 a month. James Heckman is a Nobel laureate economist who's done a lot of studies on the benefits of investing in children early and the great return on investment when you invest in human capital. For every dollar invested in high-quality early childhood programs, society can save $7. I've seen that figure much higher in other studies. In costs associated by keeping kids out of the juvenile justice system, fewer prisons, less police and prosecution. We could have fewer remedial programs, and ultimately, when children are not successful in their younger years, they generally have higher health care issues. So we're very, very proud that our local Greater Gainesville Chamber of Commerce has endorsed this. That was not an easy endorsement, but they did. We went back to them several times, and they've studied this, and they agree. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce has come out strongly in favor of businesses and local governments working to align the early learning system and the K-12 system so that children enter school ready to learn. They also support creating early learning policies as part of economic development. We all want the same thing. I think we all have very common goals for our community's children. We want them to be born healthy, to grow up safe, to enter kindergarten ready to learn, to be reading on grade level by 3rd grade. That's a critical year for reading. And to graduate high school with the skill sets they need to go on to college or to a vocation or into our workforce. So when we have more children that are coming out of high school with the skill sets they need to be successful and be part of our local economy, it lifts everyone's boat. McKinsey & Company did a study and studied the impact U.S. achievement gaps have in the United States of America, and it results in a permanent state of recession but that they could be closed with more equitable education for our country's children, and that would give everyone in the Alachua County greater economic gains if more children are successful when they come out of high school. So who supports the Children's Trust? I came and I saw you in the middle of May, and we've actually got quite a few endorsements. The Chamber of Commerce, United Way, League of Women Voters, Altrusa, Acorn, Sheriff Darnell is a big supporter of this. We have been to the City of High Springs and the City of Waldo for the 2nd time, and both of them have passed resolutions in support. We have done polling, and 66% of our respondents who were in favor of creating the trust. There was solid support for the ballot proposal, even went higher when they learned more about what we wanted to do for children. Residents perceive early learning, literacy, after-school learning, nutrition, and vocational opportunities as the most important things that we could fund. We would like to increase the registered nurse, increase the services for prenatal to 5, build on that, and go serve children from 0 to 18. Not just prenatal to 5, but 0 to 18 if we're successful in November. On the registered nurse home visits, some moms might need follow-up care. They may have children that have special needs, and right now there isn't funding for that. We'd like to have expand on the quality early childhood education and care initiatives to ensure school readiness, literacy supports, mentoring programs, and out-of-school programs and summertime. And with that, I would be happy to answer any of your questions. We know that the schools will also be on the ballot with a half-cent sales tax infrastructure. We see what we're doing as complementary and not competitive. We'd like to make 2018 the year of the child. And it's important that we have schools that don't have leaking roofs and that have air conditioners that work. But we also have to do that programmatic side, start earlier, younger with children, and give them everything that they need.
So the county has funded some portion of this. They put it on the ballot. What are you asking for from front of the
Tonight we're asking the smaller municipalities. You all are incredibly important. Your children have needs, and we'd like very much for you to think about. In the meantime, we just saw a presentation by your recreation department. there are a lot of things that, if we pass in November, we want you to be ready and to be a part of this and come talk to them about your needs in Newberry for out-of-school programming, for what we can do for the literacy in your area. But we're asking you to pass a resolution that the clerk has prepared in support of this go on the ballot in November.
Okay. All right, questions from the dais about the Commissioner Farnsworth?
Will the county continue with their funding, or will they discontinue their funding if this is approved?
They've always said that they were giving us a head start on the prenatal to 5 and a head start toward taking out to voter referendum for 0 to 18. So they would, that $1.2 million would go back into the county funds.
And how much money do they think this will generate?
About $7 million a year for children's programming.
And that's how much is needed to run this program?
Well, when you consider that we're not anywhere near what we could be doing for the prenatal to 5 sector, and that's at $1.2 million, they won't necessarily, the independent board that will be appointed as soon as, if this passes in November, they will do the needs assessment first, and then they will take input from the public, put together a budget, a proposed budget by June, and the funding won't actually be available until next year, October 1. So it's up to $500,000. They could start slow, expand on the prenatal to 5, or they could take everyone's public input and put forward a budget that would do the entire $7 million.
So this is going to be running from prenatal to?
Right now, it's currently prenatal to 5. If we're successful on the ballot in November, it would serve all children from 0 to 18 by Florida statute.
And what is does the school board have any meat in the game, or are they just this is going to be independent of the school board, or?
This would be it would be, the school board could not take the funding. The funding would go to organizations that serve children in the community. However, the school board members have indicated their strong support at a joint county commission and school board meeting. The funding would serve children outside of school time. However, that's where the kids are. So if we need to go to the early learning centers or to the schools to serve the children, they would do, the independent council and others in other counties do that. They provide a lot of their out-of-school programming is actually provided in some of the schools. For instance, another example of how we might support the schools, it could not be under the schools, but the system of care that's currently funded by an independent, a community donor, puts money in to serve mental health services at 4 schools. That's not universal. We'd like to see those kind of services increase countywide. If that donor from the community doesn't fund that any longer, those services go away. So those kind of services could be offered in the schools to children that are in the schools all across Alachua County. But it would be overseen by this independent children's board and the organizations that provide those services, not by the school board itself. And I just would like to point out also that the schools will have a voice at the table because they have a school board member and the school superintendent who will be on that independent board.
Let's say that there's some children born, and do you guys go knocking on their door, or do they need to call you to have you come out to visit?
For the RN visit?
Yes.
They are contacted. The RNs talk to them right in the hospital. The midwives are a part of it. All of them are a part of that group. So we have both Shands and North Florida as a part of this program, and they coordinate the RN that goes out. If you have a baby, if you have a child with a midwife, they do it also. So you're actually contacted as you're having the child in the hospital, in the maternity ward, actually.
So then it's up to the parents whether you come out to visit, go
Yes.
home visit or not.
Yes, it's not. We're not forcing this on anyone. If some people are not comfortable having someone come into their home, we are not going to make them have an RN visit. But other counties who are doing this have found that, especially by word of mouth, and as the program grows and people get to understand what a resource this is, it grows in popularity.
And the kid that's in the 3rd grade, that's doing poorly in school, is that something that you're going to proactively pursue, or is that something that the parents are going to have to say, hey, I need help, my kid?
No, this is something that this board should proactively support. And one, by supporting parents and children earlier, and also by helping with literacy programs and after-school programs that can give children that kind of support.
Okay, any other questions from the dais? Comments, Commissioner Martin?
Ms. Benson, I applaud your effort, but I cannot support you.
Okay.
You know, I look across the landscape of this country and we're $22 trillion in debt. Every election cycle, government comes back for more taxes on a regular basis. This smells a lot like socialism to me, respectfully. More cradle-to-grave government that I just absolutely abhor. I'm a huge advocate for smaller government. I think most of these things that you speak of should be the responsibility of the parents.
Okay.
And if they can't do it, they probably don't need to be having children, respectfully. I think your data probably is very supportive of the effort, and this may be very well something that I would support privately, but not as a government entity. And if the voters of the county seem fit, I'm sure that they will vote, and there's a very good likelihood that this will pass. You know, I think part of it is you're not forcing the parent to take the service, but you're forcing the parent to pay the tax through the property tax. I just have a fundamental disagreement with that. And going back to the data and that sort of thing that you're advocating, I think that is all the more motivation to try to push this out to the private sector. Government's terribly inefficient. If you can get it to the private sector, it'd be much more efficient. You could probably have more money and do a lot more good with it. So I'm sorry, I just wouldn't support something like that.
I completely respect your position. All I can really say to that is that children don't get to pick their parents, and some of them are starting behind the 8 ball. And we would like to do our very best to create a collaborative system of care in Alachua County that really does support children and give them the resources that they need.
Commissioner Coleman?
How you doing, Ms. Benson?
Hi.
I applaud all what you're doing. I totally agree with it. I look at everything that you've done, but unfortunately, Alachua County is almost at the cap 10, and we put too much on our citizens as it already is. I think it really, if the county commission wants to quit putting stuff into a lot of pet projects, I think this would be a great project for them. But to go to our citizens and ask for a half mil, it's just not good, and I can't support this. But I really do think this is a good program, but we're already taxing the snot out of all of our citizens. So.
I hear you, and I respect that, and I really don't love paying taxes either, but I also know that it's you know, we need to invest in children, but I certainly appreciate your position.
Any other commissioners have any questions or comments? Ready to open up to the public? Does anyone from the public like to make a comment on the presentation?
I guess I have a couple questions. We're not noted in this state for funneling the funds that are supposed to be in a place to that place. And so I guess my question is, if this were to pass, what assurances do we have that all of the money that is being added to the taxpayer through the property taxes, what assurances do we have that all of that money goes into this? Because as we all know, that doesn't happen too often. And then secondly, is that the independent board, will they control completely those funds? I know there are a couple of these, a couple of those on the board, but will that board then have complete control over those funds?
Okay. Ms. Benson, you want to try to take your best shot at answering both of those?
It's mandated by Florida statute. The county commission would be the body that would receive the quarterly reports on the spending and the programs to make sure that it's data-driven and that they're doing everything that they said. But by Florida statute, that funding has to go to children's needs and children's programming in Alachua County. It won't, it's mandated by Florida statute. It would go to the children's needs, and that independent board would make the ultimate decisions about the programs and things that they would fund.
Okay. Any other questions from the public, comments from the public about this program? Okay. Hearing
I'll go ahead and read the title, and then you can decide how to vote. This is Resolution 2018-17, amending a resolution of the City of Newberry, Florida, supporting the creation of a Children's Trust of Alachua County by voter referendum on November 6, 2018, repealing all resolutions in conflict and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass Resolution 2018-17 upon its reading by title only.
Do I have that motion? Well, I think we all really do appreciate what you're working on.
Yes, thank you very
We
much.
really do care about all the issues that you care about. I think that, you know, our stance up here is simply that we do have an awful lot of pots of taxes that are being pulled from us.
Right.
But it sounds like you've got a lot of support behind you. We wish you well in that endeavor. I appreciate you coming out here tonight and waiting to
Thanks.
give us this presentation. It was certainly educational, and we'll be much better voters when it shows up on the ballot.
Awesome. Thanks
Thank
for
you, ma'am.
having me.
Thank
I
you for your
appreciate it very
time.
much.
Okay, we will have the Resolution 2018 appointing members to the Planning and Zoning Board. Now, we have communicated with all of our applicants this time, so the applicants that are here have the opportunity to speak for a couple of minutes about their application and what they think they could bring to the board. Brian, do you want to?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I was just introduce the names of the three
Sure.
candidates that have put in applications. And we do have an accompanying resolution once the selection's been made, selecting the applicant and then also the existing members. Applicant number one is John Shaw. I should mention all members are residents of the City of Newberry. The second applicant is Kathy Thomas. And the third applicant is Naeem Urshid.
Well done.
I was determined to get that one right this time. And as you mentioned, all three were contacted, but I'm not sure if all three have made it to the...
I think Miss Kathy indicated that she is out on a volleyball tournament with her daughter, but she gave everybody the opportunity to contact her and get her 2-minute spiel. We go in an alphabetical order here. Naeem, you want to come up and give us your... You don't have to. And if you were all given a ballot after, as people are given there, if you would rank who your first choice, second choice, third choice is, and then at the end of everyone will pass it down. The low score will be your appointee. Don't feel the need to take up all 2 minutes. Certainly have them if you like.
Sorry, just getting some. My name's Naeem Urshid. Citizen of Newberry. I'm pretty active in the political spectrum of things. My concerns for the city. One thing about me that I think I have proven over the years of being here is I'm a facts guy. I leave emotions at the door. I check them at the door. I do have emotions. I'm Cuban. Emotions run a lot of me. But when it comes to decision making, just like I do in the forums and just like I do everywhere else, I make sure that people check them at the door. What we need is facts. What I want is facts. I want numbers. I look at everything up and down. Right now, my place of employment, I do work at Nationwide. My official title is senior processor. That's basically an analyst of underwriting. I look at every single detail before it hits our member, because it's not just protection of the company, it's protection of our members. We want to make sure that everything is done accordingly to state laws and guidelines and everything that needs to follow through to make sure that everybody is protected on every spectrum. Some of my credentials, this is the third year in a row that I received the Presidential Volunteer Award. I received silver in 2015, 2016 I received the bronze, and last year I received silver. That's over 400 hours each year of volunteer service that I give back to the community. I enjoy giving back to the community. I feel that I will have an impact here because of the fact that not just that I live here, but my children are being raised here. And I look at things being done right, and I want things done right. You do them, forgive me, but my dad always says it, you know, don't half but everything you do. Do it right the first time, and you don't have to go back and do it again. So measure twice, cut once.
Thank you, sir. All right, John, would you like to come?
John Shaw, 685 Southwest 242nd Terrace. In my professional capacity, I am the Director of Emergency Management for Alachua County, and as such, I do prefer to stay apolitical to anything that I am doing. I do believe that because I am an assessor of emergency management programs from around not only local, state, federal, but also international programs, I'm looking at their compliance with their documented procedures and plans that have been developed with stakeholders. I believe that for that reason, I would be the best choice to be a member of the Planning and Zoning Committee for the City of Newberry. I am a relatively recent transplant to the City of Newberry, but honestly, I love it. So I don't want to take too much time, but thank you.
And I should have asked, and we'll come back to Naeem, but if you have any questions for the candidates, we'll go ahead and do Johnson. He's here. I apologize, Naeem, for forgetting that part. Do you have anything that you'd like to ask John about? No? All right. That's it. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. Did you have anything that you'd like to bring Naeem back up and ask him about? All right. Well, if you come on in, Commissioner Martin.
Scott, as an employee of the county, is there any sort of conflict that we need to be concerned about with Mr. Shaw?
No, he's fine. My suggestion, Mr. Mayor, is just go ahead and put a motion of who you want to pick, so there's no question of the secret ballot or any of that kind of thing. So if the commissioners wish to put a motion as to who to pick on the table.
No, we had a whole process here, Scott. A whole conversation. We tried to get out of here before 10 o'clock. Now, so you're saying the ballots that we prepared and they've just filled out, you don't want us to do that? That would be part of the public record.
I would like for everybody to have a public process as to their vote and not because as I understand this process, it doesn't allow who voted for who. So I think we need to.
All right, well, let's, we're going to do this on the fly tonight. So forget the ballots, and we've heard the presentations. So I will entertain a motion to appoint. Do you want to go ahead and read it into the record first, or you want the motion first? Do we have the name to put into
motion?
All right. So I'll entertain a motion. Whoever you had down as your first pick on the ballot, go ahead and make a motion. We'll see if that's where everybody else was at as well. Commissioner Coleman?
I make a motion that that we go ahead and approve Neum, and I don't want to say his last name because I'm going to mess it up. Urchin.
Naeem, not Neum.
I just Neum. I mean, he's a movie star. But that's who I want to nominate. No disrespect to Mr. John Shaw. I don't know him, but I know Neum has been very.
I don't know Neum, but
has been very, very, very active with everything here with the city since he's moved here.
Okay, I have a motion to appoint Naeem, and I have a second. Any comments, questions on the motion on the floor? Any comments from the public on the motion on the floor? All those in favor of appointing Naeem signify by saying aye. Aye. Was that unanimous? Motion passed unanimous. Mr. Walker?
Mr. Mayor, I'll read this by title only.
Yeah, it was a, okay, roll call. Commissioner Coleman?
Aye.
Commissioner Herschman? Aye. Commissioner Farnsworth? Commissioner Martin? Okay, motion passes 3-1. Mr. Walker?
Mr. Mayor, this is Resolution 2018-19, amending Resolution 2017-14 and Resolution 2017-17. A resolution of the City of Newberry, Florida, appointing members to the Planning and Zoning Board of the City of Newberry, Florida, establishing calendar year appointment terms, repealing all resolutions in conflict, and providing an effective date. Whereas the City Board and Committee procedure adopted by the City Commission requires the appointment of members to the Planning and Zoning Board, now therefore be it resolved by the City Commission of the City of Newberry, Florida, Section 1, the following individual is appointed to serve as the Planning and Zoning Board of the City of Newberry, Florida, for the appropriate terms hereinafter set forth, commencing with the effective date of this resolution and terms hereinafter set forth. Jordan Marlowe, our mayor, non-voting ex officio commission representative, serves in conjunction with his commission term. Jessica Baker, 3-year term, set term to end April 30th, 2020. Walt Boyer, 3-year term ending on April 30th, 2020. Wanda Laird, 2-year term, set term ending April 30th, 2019. Bill Conrad, 2-year term, set term to end April 30th, 2019. And Naeem Ershad, who's going to complete the vacated 2-year term. His term will end on April 30th, 2019. Section 2, all resolutions or parts of resolution to the extent of conflict are hereby repealed. This resolution shall take effect immediately upon its adoption, passed and adopted by an affirmative vote of a majority of the quorum present at the City Commission of the City of Newberry, Florida, at a regular meeting this 25th day of June 2018. Signature for yourself, Mayor Marlowe, and attested by the Clerk of the City Commission of the City of Newberry, Florida, Judy S. Rice, City Clerk, approved by myself as to form and legality. The appropriate motion is to pass Resolution 2018-19, amending the Resolution 2017-14 and Resolution 2017-17. And the appropriate motion is to pass the resolution as read by its entirety.
Do I have that motion? I have a motion from Commissioner Farnsworth, a second from Commissioner Coleman. Any comments on, now we have the appointment motion, now this is the whole board. Commissioner Coleman?
Mr. Shaw, no malice here. I'm so glad that you want to be a part of the Newberry system, and I plead to you to encourage you to. There's so many other things that we have here for it, and you can tell 2019 is coming pretty quick, and there's going to be more openings for that. Probably I sense at least 2 of those. So I'm just saying, please don't take this any other way. It's just come on out and get involved. And I really, really appreciate you putting your name in the hat.
Please.
I'd just like to say thank you, and I have a lot thicker of a skin, so I'm good. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments on the motion on the floor? Any public questions, comment on the motion on the floor? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passed unanimously. I would encourage, join Commissioner Coleman's. Please continue to get involved. We love when folks join Newberry and jump right in. With that, we will move on to item C, is the Champions Park Professional Management Services RFP, and I believe the manager is going to move us through this agenda item.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Enclosed, or we have provided to the Commission copies of RFP submittal documents received. As you recall, in last October, the City Commission directed staff to enter a short-term park management agreement with Champions Park of Newberry LLC, and to operate the park for through June of 2018, and to develop an RFP and put the park management services contract out for consideration. The city staff completed that. The RFP was issued in April of 2018. The RFP document included general information, instructions to respondents, what the work scope was, required submission information, an evaluation selection process, and several exhibits. A copy of the RFP document, if you're having insomnia one evening, is enclosed as backup if you really want to read through 54 exciting pages of the City of Newberry's procurement services. We held a pre-submission meeting on May 15th at the park. It was not mandatory for applicants to attend. We received 4 proposals on May the 29th, one from Athletic, Competitive, and Recreational Sports Management Group. They go by the acronym ACR. We received a proposal from Champions Park of Newberry, Florida, LLC, a proposal from Damon Messina and Hal Brady, not Hall Brady, typo, and we received a proposal from Rad Sports. We have provided hard copies of each proposal to the City Commission, to each commissioner. The RFP document is very clear in how this the process will go, how the proposals would be evaluated. I provided a copy of that in the staff report. There's six items for consideration. Then further goes on to what the selection process will be. There was a staff review committee of 5 individuals that reviewed the 4 proposals for the 6 criteria mentioned previously, and staff ranked those, each of the proposals, gave them a combined score. The top 3 firms are planned for the City Commission to interview in a public meeting. They'll provide presentations, and there'll be an opportunity for interviewing, and then the Commission can rank them in any order that they proceed, or that they choose to order them and select a candidate. The RFP document anticipates that they would rank them, authorize staff to negotiate with the highest ranked firm. If those negotiations or we can't reach a successful contract, then staff would move to the second ranked, and we would have that direction from the Commission that we would then begin to negotiate with the number 2 ranked. We would advise, of course, and continue on until we came to a contractual arrangement that was favorable both to staff and the city attorney, of course, and the candidate park operator. So we've done that. We ranked the 4 proposals. The highest ranked proposal was from Rad Sports with an aggregate score of 685. Second was ACR with an aggregate score of 660. Champions Park of Newberry with an aggregate score of 555. And Damon Messina and Hal Brady, again Hall Brady, I'm having a bad day, at 495 was 4th ranked firm. So the next step is for the 3 highest ranked firms to make presentations to the Commission, and then the firms would be ranked again by the Commission. Staff proposes, we've kind of trying to find that open date, that opportunity that would give each of the 3 firms an opportunity to prepare their presentations and would have all of our elected officials present. We propose July the 31st.
And hopefully that date is still good, because it was monumental to find a time in July when everybody can be here. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I didn't want anybody to pipe up and say, actually, I'm not going to be.
Staff's, that's fine. I'm right at the end. Our recommended action is to receive the report. I should have read this first. Receive the report and accept the evaluation committee's ranking of respondents of Champions Park of Newberry's Park Management Services RFP, and number 2, schedule presentations with the 3 highest ranked firms.
Okay, are there any questions to staff on that? All we got tonight is to accept the top 3, agreed that's July 31st is the date that we're going to hear each of those presentations, and then remember that the blackout period will continue until that July 31st date.
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner Martin.
is the 31st the earliest date that we could get a consensus? Is that why we're at the 31st?
Yes.
So there was nothing earlier?
There was nothing.
Okay.
It was no one single person. It was a collection of,
I don't suppose it requires a motion, but if it does, I'm amicable to move that
I think we'd are
on
looking for a
those 2
motion.
points.
So I have a
I'm willing
motion.
to motion. I'm
Motion.
willing to offer a motion for those 2 points, yes, sir.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Martin, a second from Commissioner Herson. Any other questions from the dais for staff? Any questions or comments from the public? July 31st, we'll hear the top 3 bidders present on their vision. Okay? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously, and that brings us to comments. City Manager? The time for the 31st was 6. And you should have gotten a calendar invite in your email from Miss Amy. Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Manager.
Mr. Mayor, our comments are that we have a scheduled budget workshop for July the 11th. Currently, only 3 commissioners can attend. However, at the second meeting in July, which is July the 23rd, the commission will be preliminary voted on their on the millage rate.
Mr. Manager, I think we're down to 2 commissioners who can attend that workshop now.
Well, staff requests that the commission make every attempt to find a date to meet before the July the 23rd City Commission meeting.
Can we put Amy on that? Not tonight, but first thing tomorrow to find an alternate date in July that we can all be at. Yeah. Right. So instead of trying to do that here tonight, let's let Amy just work on that tomorrow, because we already did that one time. Summer is a very fluid.
I believe she already asked for all of our summer schedules. So
Yes,
She
yeah.
should be able to do that expeditiously if we've replied to our emails.
Yeah, and
Commissioner.
yeah, in
Commissioner
that
Coleman.
last email, our last meeting, that was the first meeting. I said that it's
Yeah.
fine for y'all to go ahead and do that one without me.
Well, and I don't mind doing it without one, but
Right.
if we're down to 2, we can't. There's not a quorum, so. But we will. Is that amenable to
Yes,
staff?
sir. I mean, the importance part is for us to get out in front what we're proposing. When you set the adopt a millage rate at the second meeting in July, it's really the maximum rate that we would entertain without having to go back and renotice. And so we tend to shoot higher than what we think it'll be, because we could have that unanticipated event that drives a higher millage rate. And just want to make sure the commission is comfortable that that whatever we put in that document for adoption is not necessarily what we anticipate spending, but or anticipating the millage rate being. It's just what we put in there, the anticipated rate plus the safety factor.
Okay.
I see on my notes here that there's a note about an ambulance, but I'm hoping that someone else is going to cover that. So I'm going to
I thought I
skip
might
that item.
have a comment or 2.
I will be out of the office most of next week and the week of the 16th through the 20th. Most of next week is more personal in nature. The 16th through the 20th, I'll be on city business attending the FMEA and FMPA annual conference. And then the following week, we are planning to take a staff trip to Atlanta, Georgia, to an Ag Tech conference. We're developing a contingency of staff and potentially elected officials to attend that conference as well. That's 2 to 3 days. It's Monday, Tuesday, and part of Wednesday. So we got kind of a busy July going on, but hopefully they'll bring a lot of fruit back to the city. No, the FMEA conference is July the 16th, and then the following week, which would be the week of the 23rd, 24th, and 25th, is the Ag Tech conference. And then finally, the last thing, well, no, I have 2 more things. Alachua County Board of County Commissions has requested that cities interested in making a pitch for the Fairgrounds project. They're having 2 meetings. One is July the 3rd. Staff plans to attend. That is a meeting of 5 different advisory boards that are going to meet in one room, and they're going to listen to alternatives and make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners. And then on Wednesday, July the 11th, the Board of County Commissioners is conducting a special meeting where they're going to discuss fairgrounds and site location. And as we understand it, they're going to select a primary and a secondary, with the thought being that if the primary falls through for whatever reason, there's not a 6-month or 1-year reset. They immediately move to number 2. So they've sent emails to each city asking cities to make some sort of a presentation if cities are interested in a play in their community. And so we are working on a proposal that we would pitch to both the advisory committees and the Board of County Commissioners in mid-July. And last comment, motor grader, we sent you an email last week. Motor grader's out of service. Last Thursday we got motor grader back in service. We were out this week grading roads again.
Good job. Commissioner Coleman?
Yeah, yeah, the meeting for the 11th is going to be tough. I guess I'm going to say I'm officially now not a Gator. I am, and I know that's going to make
Commissioner Farnsworth is weeping.
Commissioner Farnsworth, but I have to give my Gator card over to Commissioner Martin. I am now officially a Trojan, and it's pretty close to garnet and gold.
Ah, well, your wardrobe won't change then. Congratulations.
No.
Tell your son we all congratulate him.
Thank you.
Commissioner Herson?
I just want to make a comment. The other day I was following one of the city trucks through my my neighborhood, and I would commend them on adhering to the speed limit in Newberry Oaks. It was very impressive. I appreciated their diligence to staying underneath the speed limit.
Commissioner Farnsworth?
Mike, the proposal that you're going to be present to the county commission, is it going to be run in front of the city commission before you do that?
Mr. Mayor, before we present to the advisory boards, we wouldn't have that opportunity. We do have a meeting on July the 9th. Would be happy to. I guess one thing to make sure the commission is aware of, it's a non-binding proposal. If staff makes a presentation, that is just getting out of the gate, and that will ultimately result in a contract, negotiations and a contract that would come before this commission for consideration. So there's no request for you to authorize me to commit the city to something you're not willing for us to be committed to.
Nothing will happen without coming before you guys. Commissioner Martin?
I think the ambulance is wonderful news. I'm sure you'll be talking more about that, so I don't want to steal a lot of your thunder. The other thing I don't want to get is a bunch of bombardment that I don't care about kids when it comes to the trust account. I respect most of the people in this community, understand where I'm coming from on things like that, so I just don't want to even be fielding that. Also moving forward through the champions, I think that we have a lot of opportunity for that sort of thing. I'm looking forward to that discussion, and just encourage everybody to stay as engaged as they have been lately. Contacting me through various means is always very easy to do, and always very important that we up here hear as much from you as possible. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, I have to give credit where credit is due. 5 years ago, this board had the foresight to replace one piece of infrastructure with another piece of infrastructure, and we put that infrastructure into remodeling the fire station and including an ambulance bay. It's very clear that the bulk of our calls are medically related when it comes to our fire station, and our response time was growing. I have to applaud staff. They have spent the last 2 years accumulating the data that we needed to convince the county that we needed that fire station, and without that data, without those reports from the chief, we wouldn't have had the resolution that we had the other day. So it is the people of Newberry who believed that we needed an ambulance and let us know that we needed an ambulance. It's this board who set that policy and that goal, and I thank you, and it's our staff that really made it happen. Newberry will be a safer community in the years to come because of that. And finally, I have to thank Commissioner Hutchinson. He was the commissioner who made the motion to approve the funding for a full-time 24/7 ambulance, and it passed 5-0. So I appreciate every single one of the county commissioners, and I appreciate everybody who's worked on this dream. Almost at the completion of the renovation of the fire station with the ambulance bay, there will be an ambulance in that station, which is an incredible achievement, and really nice timing when it comes to it. So with that, I will ask for public comment. We have 5 minutes. At the end of the night, you can talk about anything you want to talk about. You've waited through this whole thing. Anything you want to hear from? Hearing none, we are adjourned.